Hello everyone, I know you are going to use this video for falling asleep, so before that, like this video, subscribe to the channel and let me know where you are from, also what time is it. The night it started, the sky above Harrowick was a bottomless bruise, inky, cracked with distant thunder that never seemed to land. Rain hadn't touched the town in nearly a month, but the air hung thick, sticky with something not quite natural. The storm rumbled like something waking up, like something that remembered pain and couldn't wait to share it. It was the kind of night that made windows rattle without wind, that made dogs howl at corners where no shadows should be. And that was the night Ava Morgan arrived at the Ashcroft house. No one had lived in the old manor for over 30 years. The locals didn't whisper about it, they ignored it. The house had become part of the town's silence, just like the children who went missing back in '89, or the priest who walked into the woods and never walked back out. No one dared walk the road past midnight. No one looked up when they drove by. No one touched it, except Ava. She hadn't come for curiosity. She hadn't come for thrills. She came because she needed answers. Her brother, Ben, vanished 3 weeks ago. One moment he was live, streaming his exploration of the manor's basement, and the next, static. Then nothing. His last words haunted her more than the silence that followed. They lied. It's not empty. It's waiting. Ava had watched the video frame by frame until her eyes burned. No jump scare. No cheap prank. Just a sudden coldness in the frame. His breath visible when there should have been no chill. And then a black smear slithering across the wall behind him, like oil with teeth. He didn't scream. He didn't even turn around. He just dropped the camera. And it kept recording for exactly 6 hours and 6 minutes. That number, it repeated everywhere she looked. His phone logs, the corrupted metadata, even the ashes of his burned journal, which refused to burn completely. A single page survived, sealed in melted plastic. On it, his handwriting scrawled frantically, slanted at an impossible angle, room 34. Left at the end. Don't go in if the door's open. The house was silent when she stepped onto the porch, but it didn't feel empty. The wood beneath her boots moaned like it hadn't been touched in centuries, though the steps were swept clean. No dust. No debris. Just rows of dead leaves, laid out in a perfect spiral around the front door. She didn't knock. She didn't call out. She turned the knob. It opened too easily. Inside was darker than it should have been, the kind of black that devours light rather than bends it. Her flashlight trembled in her grip as the beam pierced the entryway. No cobwebs. No signs of animals. Everything was clean. Too clean. A thin scent of antiseptic clung to the walls, layered over something older. Rot, maybe. Or meat left out too long. Or something that used to be meat. She stepped in and the door shut behind her. It didn't slam, it clicked, like a lock, like a choice. Like the house had taken her answer, and now it was her turn to listen. The foyer was frozen in time. Dustless furniture. A mirror with no reflection. A grandfather clock that ticked only when she didn't look at it. She turned back toward the door, heart pounding, and saw nothing but hallway. Longer than it had any right to be, stretching deep into the darkness, like it had been waiting for her. She pressed forward. The hallway was lined with numbered doors, 1 through 17, all closed, all identical, and all humming. She didn't hear it so much as feel it, like a low drone echoing in her teeth, vibrating just beneath her skin. At door 9, the numbers began to change. 10, 11, 14, 17, 22. They weren't skipping, they were lying, rearranging themselves, testing her. She didn't stop. She couldn't. Something behind her had started breathing. Not footsteps, not dragging, just breathing, wet, eager, like someone trying not to laugh with their mouth full of water. She walked faster. It walked faster. She broke into a run. The breathing turned to panting. Then the doors stopped at 33. Beyond it, a sharp left turn led to a dead end with one final door. Room 34. Her flashlight flickered. Once, twice. then steadied, The door was closed. She froze. Because that was the only thing Ben had begged her not to do, go in if the door was open. So closed was safe, right? Wrong. A sound came from inside. Not loud, not threatening. Just familiar. Ben's voice, whispering her name. Ava, Ava, I can see you. You're here, aren't you? She swallowed hard. Ben. Nothing. Then 3 knocks. From the inside of the door. It sounded like knuckles made of stone hitting wood. She stepped back. The breathing behind her was gone. The hallway was empty. But the mirror in the foyer, at least she thought it was the mirror, was suddenly at the other end of the corridor. She could see herself in it. Except it wasn't just her. Her reflection was smiling. She wasn't. The door behind her creaked. Not open. Just cracked. A sliver. And from inside, something moved. Something that didn't walk. Didn't crawl. It slid. Ava should have run. She knew that. But curiosity, no obsession, held her still. She pushed the door just enough to peek inside. It wasn't a room. It was a mouth. The walls pulsed with veins too large for wood. The floor oozed, slick with something warm and red. The ceiling wasn't there. It was a gaping void, stars twitching like nerves, constellations rearranging into shapes she recognized but couldn't name. In the center, her brother stood. Eyes hollow, mouth open wider than any human jaw could stretch. His limbs bent wrong, but his smile was genuine. "You found me," he said. Then his smile vanished. "But you shouldn't have." Something exploded from his chest, not blood, not gore. It was light, blinding, searing, cold. It poured into her eyes like needles, showing her images burned into the backs of her eyelids. Children in cages beneath the floorboards, walls whispering names in the dark. A woman made of hair and teeth, dancing above a pit that swallowed time. And a man with no face, painting with a brush dipped in screams. She slammed the door shut, and it disappeared. Just like that. No more door, no more hallway, no more room. She was in the foyer again. The clock ticked. The mirror no longer showed anything, and her flashlight died. She stood there alone, trying not to scream, trying to breathe. Then something on her hand caught her eye. Numbers burned into her palm. A timer, 6060, counting down. It had started the moment she saw what was inside. And from the shadows behind her, the breathing returned. Only this time, it wasn't behind her. It was inside the walls, and the house whispered, "Welcome home, Ava." She didn't sleep. Not that night. Not the next. She couldn't, even if she wanted to. Every time Ava closed her eyes, she saw him. Ben, or whatever was left of him, smiling with that broken, puppet-like face, lit from inside like a paper lantern burning too bright. That thing wearing his voice, twisting it into something soft and cruel. But worse than that were the sounds that came with sleep. The house had begun whispering to her. Not all at once. Not words. Just fragments. Echoes of laughter that sounded like crying. Screams so faint they almost sounded like lullabies. And sometimes whispers in her own voice, repeating one phrase over and over. "You shouldn't have come alone." The timer on her palm ticked down without mercy. It was still there when she washed. Still there when she tried to scrub it off with soap and steel wool. Still there after she bled. The numbers never changed their pace, counting down 1 second at a time, as if measuring her worth, or worse, her usefulness. She had no idea what would happen when it hit 0. Death. Possession. Something worse. The house didn't say, but it was watching. She could feel it behind every surface, every floorboard and beam. It pulsed like a heart. A rotten one, still beating out of habit, not life. She tried to leave, of course. After she closed that door, the one that vanished, she turned back to the front hall. The knob turned. The lock clicked. The door even swung open. But there was no world outside, just blackness. Not a void, not absence. Black that watched her, that waited. A wall of it, breathing like lungs of tar. She threw a shoe into it. The black swallowed it without a sound. Then, hours later, she found that same shoe in the freezer, covered in teeth marks. So she stayed. She started mapping the house with chalk, drawing marks on every corner, door, and wall she passed. But every mark vanished within minutes, sometimes seconds. Once, she watched the chalk line peel itself off the wall like skin. Then came the knocking. At first, it only happened when she sat still. 3 hard knocks. Always 3. On a door she hadn't noticed before. Sometimes it was on a wall. Once it was from the inside of a mirror. But the worst was when the knocks came from under her bed, while she lay on it, trembling, refusing to breathe. 3 slow, deliberate thumps. Then silence. She never checked, not after the first time. Because the first time she did, she saw fingers. Not hands. Fingers. Too many. All bending backward. It was on the 3rd night that the house finally spoke to her clearly. She had found a room that seemed untouched by the sickness. A small study, dimly lit, the air stale with old paper and lemon polish. A fire crackled in the hearth, though no logs burned. She didn't question it. She needed warmth, sanity, a moment to pretend the world outside still existed. On the desk sat a journal, thick leather binding, no name, no lock. It had her brother's handwriting on the first page. If you're reading this, I'm probably not me anymore. The words hit her like ice water. She kept reading, her hands shaking, eyes devouring every line, like they might vanish the moment she blinked. I thought I could map it. Thought I could understand it. But this house doesn't have rules. It has moods. It changes when you're not looking. It feeds on choices. If you're reading this, then it's already started for you too. You'll see things. Things from your past. Things that never happened. Don't trust the clocks. Don't listen to the music. And whatever you do, don't go into room 43. Room 43. She hadn't seen anything past 34. The hallway had ended there. Unless the house was rearranging itself again. Below that warning, he had scribbled a map. Crude, barely legible, but it gave her something. A path. A plan. It pointed to the basement. Ava hated basements. Even before all this. As a child. She refused to go near their childhood home cellar. She couldn't explain it. There was never anything down there. But it had always felt wrong. Like someone had buried something beneath the concrete and forgotten to kill it first. Now, this house, this thing pretending to be a house, wanted her to go even deeper. She took a fireplace poker with her, not that she thought it would help. The stairs creaked beneath her feet like they resented the weight of a living body. And the further she went down, the more it smelled like soil. Not damp basement stone, but wet earth, like a grave freshly opened. The light failed her halfway. From then on, she moved by memory, by breath, by the pressure of air that grew thicker with every step. The basement wasn't empty. It was filled with mannequins. Hundreds of them, lifeless, pale, some cracked at the joints, all staring in different directions. She whispered Ben's name without meaning to, and one of the mannequins turned its head, just slightly, just enough. Ava didn't scream. Screaming would make it real. She slipped past them like a ghost, careful not to touch a single one. But as she neared the far wall, where Ben's map said to look, she saw a small door. Too small for a person. More like a crawl space, nailed shut with old iron. Beside it, etched into the brick with something sharp, was a phrase. H-E Heidi I-T hair E. Her hand moved before her brain could stop it. She tore at the nails, broke 2 fingernails doing it, ripped the skin from her knuckles. When the final nail dropped, the panel swung open. Inside there was no passage, just a box, old, black, wrapped in chains that were warm to the touch. The moment she laid eyes on it, her timer jumped forward. From 5:7:32 to 29:03, she staggered back. The house laughed, not loudly, not through speakers, but inside the walls, in the pipes, in the lights, it laughed. She didn't remember getting back upstairs. Time had fractured. The clocks all spun. Her watch reversed. The fire in the study burned blue. She vomited up a muff, then another. Then something that looked like a tooth but wasn't hers. She locked herself in a bathroom. Hours passed, or seconds. Then the music began. From somewhere in the house, a phonograph played an old waltz, warped, dragging, slightly off key. It called to her, sweet and poisonous. She couldn't stop her feet. She opened the bathroom door, and the house had changed again. The hallway was a ballroom now, with guests, dancing, except none of them had faces. Ava walked among them, unnoticed. The faceless guests moved in perfect sync. Their limbs clicked like clockwork. Their laughter, dry and papery, slipped between the cracks in her mind. One of them reached for her hand. She didn't pull away in time. Its fingers gripped hers like a vice. Cold, slick. It whispered in a mouth it didn't have. "You're late." Then it began to dance with her. The song sped up. The room spun. The guests blurred. She couldn't breathe. Then, like snapping a bone, the scene fractured. She was back in the foyer, back on the floor, covered in dirt. Her hands were bleeding. Her shoes were missing. The number on her palm was now red, 0314. The timer was almost gone. And then, the worst thing of all, something that broke her more than anything else. She heard her mother's voice, calling her name, soft, gentle, from upstairs. Ava stood, because no matter how strong she thought, she was some things you can't ignore. Not when they sound like home. It wasn't possible. Ava knew that. Her mother had been gone for almost 10 years. Sudden brain aneurysm. Dead before the ambulance could even get to the house. She'd grieved, buried her, kept the eulogy in her coat pocket for a full year after the funeral, as if reading it again would somehow make her feel closer. But now, that same voice, the one that used to hum lullabies over pots of tea, the one that whispered bedtime stories she swore came from dreams, was calling her name from upstairs. "Ava, come upstairs, sweetheart. I made your favorite." The words drifted down like smoke, curling through the air with a warmth that didn't belong in this place. Ava stood frozen at the bottom of the staircase, her heart beating so loud, she wondered if the house could hear it too. No part of her wanted to believe it. No part of her thought this was real. But she moved anyway, because that voice wasn't just calling her by name. It was saying things only her mother would know. "Leave your shoes, baby. You always hated wearing them in the kitchen." Her eyes burned. She didn't notice she'd started to cry until she wiped her cheek and saw the red smear on her fingertips. Not tears. Blood, thin and warm, sliding from her tear ducts as if her body no longer knew how to respond to grief properly. But still, she climbed the stairs. Slowly, one step at a time. Each creak beneath her weight echoed louder than the last, like the house was counting. Judging, the second floor looked wrong. All the architecture had changed. The stairwell that should have opened into a long hallway now split into 3 narrow corridors, each one lined with wallpaper that shifted between blinking eyes and crawling vines, depending on the angle. The floor sagged under her feet, pulsing faintly like it was breathing just beneath the boards. The air smelled like burnt sugar and rust. She followed the voice. It led her down the middle hall. The walls here were covered in photographs. Dozens, maybe hundreds of them, all in identical brass frames, all slightly tilted. She didn't recognize any of the people in the photos until she did. Her 5th birthday party, her first day of high school, Ben standing beside her at a graduation they never actually got to attend. And then photos that couldn't exist. Photos of her sleeping, of her brushing her teeth, of her sitting in this very hallway. She stopped. In one of the frames, she was staring directly at the camera. No smile, just wide eyes. Behind her, a shadow stretched across the wall, impossibly tall, crooked at the neck, one arm longer than the other. She wasn't alone in that photo, and yet she didn't remember ever being watched. The voice grew louder. "In here, sweetheart, I've been waiting." The last door on the left opened by itself. Inside was her childhood kitchen, exactly as she remembered it. The linoleum floor with the cracked tiles, the ugly mustard, yellow fridge, the table with a single leg that always wobbled unless you stuffed a folded napkin under it. And there, standing by the stove humming to herself, was her mother, back turned, wearing that same blue dress she'd been buried in. Ava couldn't breathe. She knew this wasn't real. Every instinct in her screamed to run. But she stepped into the kitchen anyway. The door shut behind her. The timer on her palm blinked red. 0 nothing happened. The woman at the stove turned around. It was her mother. And it wasn't. Her eyes were too wide, too bright, like porcelain marbles pushed into soft clay. Her smile was frozen, stretched at the corners like a puppet's mouth. Her fingers bled where the nails had been torn away, but she moved like nothing was wrong. "I missed you so much," the thing said, voice warm and wrong at the same time. "You've been gone so long." Ava backed away. "You're not her." The thing tilted its head. "Of course I am. Who else would I be?" Its face twitched, like something trying to hold a shape that didn't fit. Its skin rippled, and for a split second, Ava saw what hid beneath. Something slick and red, covered in mouths. Too many mouths, all whispering in unison. She turned to run, but the door was gone. Not closed. Gone. In its place was a blank wall, covered in peeling wallpaper that pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. She spun back, and the kitchen had changed. The table was now a gurney. Her mother stood beside it, holding a scalpel. The thing wearing her face grinned. "You always wondered what made you different, Ava. Let me show you. Let me open you." Ava screamed, loud, wordless, and for the first time since entering the house, something else answered. From beyond the walls, a bell tolled once, twice, 3 times. The kitchen exploded in light, blinding, white, like staring into the heart of a dying star. When it faded, she was no longer in the kitchen, no longer in the house at all. She was in a field. Moonlight above, grass beneath her feet, and a forest ahead, thick with trees that bent away from her like they were afraid. Ava turned in a slow circle, dizzy and dazed. Her clothes were soaked in blood. Her hands trembled. The timer on her palm was gone, but a new symbol had taken its place. A spiral, etched in black, still warm. Then she heard it, music, that same warped waltz, playing from deep inside the woods. She ran. Not toward it, away. Branches whipped her face. Roots reached for her ankles. The forest was alive, and it did not want her here. But she didn't stop. Not until she saw the figure, standing between the trees. A man, 7 feet tall, no face, no hands, just sleeves filled with shadow, and a mouth stitched shut with rusted wire. He held out something in his arms, a box, black, wrapped in chains, the same one from the basement, and it was open now. Inside it was her heart, still beating, still warm. She took a step back, shaking her head. "No, no, you're not real." But the man didn't move, didn't speak, just pointed behind her with one long, trembling arm. She turned and saw the Ashcroft house standing in the middle of the woods, lit from within. Every window filled with fire, and silhouetted in the highest window was Ben, smiling, calling her name. The spiral on her palm pulsed. The box slammed shut by itself, and the man vanished, leaving her alone again, breathless, terrified, and worse, starting to believe this place knew her. The house shouldn't have been there. Ava had run through a forest that hadn't existed a moment before, heard whispers from trees that bent to watch her, been offered her own heart by something stitched from shadow and memory. And yet, the Ashcroft house loomed ahead like it had never moved. It stood perfectly still in the clearing, windows flickering with firelight, as if mocking her efforts to escape. The spiral on her palm burned now, not sharp like a cut, but deep, like something was digging inside her skin, trying to pull her in from the inside out. She didn't want to go back. Every part of her screamed to turn, to vanish into the woods, to find something, anything else. But the moment she stepped away, the trees closed behind her. Roots rose like claws, branches locked together, the forest folding over itself like a curtain being drawn shut. And when she turned back around, the distance to the house had shortened. It wasn't across the clearing anymore. It was just a few feet away. Like it had moved. Like it had come to her. She stepped up to the front door. Again. This time she didn't touch the knob. It opened for her. No sound. Just that same quiet surrender, like the house was sighing in relief. Welcome back. Inside, the air had changed. It wasn't cold anymore. It was humid, wet. The floor squelched beneath her boots, and the walls glistened with condensation, or maybe sweat. Every window had been boarded over. The firelight she'd seen. Gone. The hallway ahead no longer followed logic. It slanted slightly downward, as if the entire house had sunk into the ground. There were no more door numbers, just symbols carved above the frames, spirals, eyes, teeth. Her own spiral pulsed again. With every beat of her heart, it darkened. She didn't know how, but she knew this was a countdown. Not of time, but of identity, of self. The longer she stayed here, the more she was becoming something else. She passed a mirror, and her reflection didn't match. It was Ava, but taller, thinner, smiling too wide. Her eyes were pure black, and something twitched behind her skin, like a hand pushing against a sheet. The reflection whispered, almost home. She punched the mirror. Glass shattered, embedding in her knuckles, but no blood spilled. Instead, black ink oozed from her wounds, thick and slow, and the spiral on her hand deepened, became three-dimensional, a brand. The skin around it cracked like dried clay, revealing movement just below the surface. Something was in her. The door at the end of the slanted hallway creaked. She turned to see it open by itself. Beyond it was a staircase that led downward, deeper than any house's foundation should go. The air pouring up from it reeked of iron and decay, and a sound echoed up from the depths, laughter, children's laughter, twisted, hollow, like a recording being played backward, and in the distance, barely audible beneath the static of the house breathing, Ben's voice. Ava. You're so close now. Just one more room. She should have run. But there was no outside anymore. No way to go back. Just forward. Down. The staircase seemed endless. Every step brought her further into something that was no longer physical. The walls melted from wood to stone, then to flesh. She passed doors that wept, windows that showed places she'd never been, an orphanage with no ceiling, a flooded cathedral where bodies floated like lilies, a hospital where the nurses wore no faces and every bed was filled with versions of her, dead in different ways. The spiral on her hand burned hotter. She stumbled at the last step and landed in a room, circular, stone, lit by candles that dripped upward instead of down. In the center was a single chair. Ben sat in it, or at least something that used to be Ben. His eyes were gone, replaced by spirals that spun slowly. His fingers had fused together, stretched into long black ribbons that wound around his chest like bindings. His skin was translucent, and inside it, things moved, shapes with eyes. Too many eyes, but he smiled. And she believed, for a moment, that her brother was still in there. You finally made it, he said, voice still his, though layered now with something deeper. Older. What is this place? She asked, barely hearing her own words. What happened to you? Ben tilted his head. The ribbons of his fingers stretched tighter. This house, it's not a house. It's a seed. Buried long ago by something that shouldn't exist. Something that feeds on meaning. It waits. It grows. And when it's ready, it opens. Ava shook her head. You said it was waiting. Waiting for what? For you. Her stomach dropped. Why me? He smiled, and for the first time since she arrived, he looked almost sad. Because you never forgot. Even as a kid, you saw what others couldn't. The man in the closet. The thing in the drain. The whispers in the wall. You weren't crazy, Ava. You were chosen. Her knees buckled. She sat not on purpose, just too weak to stand. Ben stood, and as he did, his body cracked. Bent, split, but he didn't bleed. He opened, and something stepped out of him, not through a door, through his skin. It was her. Another Ava, but hollow. Skin pale as bone, eyes missing. Spiral carved into her entire chest. It smiled with her mouth, and whispered in her voice, "Time to come back." The spiral on her palm screamed now, not just pain, memory. She saw flashes, her birth, her mother whispering something into her ear in a language she never understood, a shadow watching her through every mirror her whole life, a version of her inside the house, waiting for her to return. "This is your shape," the other Ava said. "This is who you were before. The human shell was just the cocoon." "No," Ava tried to stand. "No, I'm not like you." Ben, what was left of him, looked at her with eyes full of spirals. "You were never human, Ava, you just forgot." And the house laughed again. Walls peeled back, the floor opened, and the room collapsed inward like a throat swallowing. She fell, through layers of time, of memory, of selves, and landed in her childhood bedroom, as it was, perfect. Still, the clock ticked. The door was closed. Everything was back to normal, except for one thing. She couldn't remember her own name. The spiral on her hand had vanished, but something was inside her chest, moving, breathing, smiling. The worst part wasn't waking up in her childhood bedroom. It wasn't the perfect recreation. The posters on the walls, the faint smell of lavender, the hollow ache of memory stuffed into every drawer. It wasn't even the fact that outside the window there was nothing but black, a sky without stars, a town without lights. No, the worst part was that everything felt right. Too right, familiar in a way that made Ava feel foreign in her own skin. Like she'd stepped into a version of herself that had already lived this moment, and she was just catching up to a fate that never stopped waiting. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her hands. The spiral was gone, but her skin was wrong. The palms felt too smooth, the creases too shallow, like they'd been remade, sculpted. Whatever that thing inside her had done, it hadn't left. It had settled. On the nightstand sat a photo in a pink plastic frame. Her and Ben, laughing in the backyard. Summer of '08. That had been the day their dog disappeared. One minute it was chasing a ball across the yard. The next it was howling at the edge of the woods, right where the tree line frayed into the neighbor's cornfield. Then nothing. No rustle. No cry. Just gone. Their parents said it ran off, but Ben had whispered to her that night, voice shaking, it didn't run. Something opened and pulled it in. She hadn't remembered that until now. She touched the frame. The photo shifted. Not the light. Not the coloring. The faces. Her own face in the image turned toward her, slowly. Its eyes blinked. Its smile widened, too far. She dropped it. The frame cracked. The photo inside rippled like water and faded to black. A knock came at the bedroom door. 3 slow raps, just like before. But this time, she wasn't scared. She was angry. Ava stood, marched to the door, yanked it open. No hallway, just herself. Not the hollow version, not a mirror image. This one was younger, maybe 13, dressed in pajamas, holding a flashlight, tears streaking her face. Ava, the younger version, whispered, eyes wide with fear, "It's in the closet again." Ava's mouth went dry, because that memory was real, that night, that moment. She'd had the dream about the dark man with the sewn mouth, woken up to scratching from the closet. Ben had still been awake. Their mother had said it was rats. Ava remembered lying awake for hours, too scared to move, while the scratching grew louder, until it was right next to her bed. "Don't open the closet," the younger Ava said, gripping her hand. "If you open it, it gets out." Ava tried to speak, but her throat was tight. "You're me." The girl nodded. "I'm the part that stayed." "What does that mean?" The girl's eyes shimmered with something ancient. Too deep for a child. "You broke the seal when you came back. It's waking up now. And you need to remember what it really wants." From behind her, the closet door creaked. Not fully. Just enough. A voice hissed through the crack. A voice older than the house, older than language. "You wore me once, before the skin. Let me wear you again." The girl let go of her hand and stepped back. "You opened it before. You forgot. That's how the spiral got in. You didn't start the curse, Ava. You're how it continues. The closet burst open, and something crawled out. Not quickly. Slowly, deliberately. The way hunger moves when it knows the prey has nowhere left to run. Its limbs were stitched from arms. Different arms. Young, old, pale, dark. They bent the wrong way. Its face was a hole, and inside that hole were rows of baby teeth, smiling. It wore Ava's voice like a stolen coat. You invited me. She tried to move. But the room was gone. She was in the woods again, standing in the middle of a ring of stones. Each stone bore her name, carved in blood. A wind rose around her, hot and wet, and the trees began to sing. They didn't hum. They sang, each one a voice from her life. Her mother, her father, Ben, teachers, friends, even strangers from her past she'd long forgotten. They sang a lullaby she didn't recognize, but the tune pulled something from inside her, something ancient and buried. In front of her, the earth opened. Not a hole, a wound. From it rose a staircase of ribs, blackened bone dripping with something thick and gray, and at the bottom, she saw light, not warm, not cold, just wrong. Something inside her moved. Not a parasite, a memory. She had been down there before, not in this life, but another. The version of her that was never named Ava. The version of her that opened the house the first time. The version that fed it and kept feeding it until the world forgot. She stepped onto the bone staircase. One foot after another, her skin began to flake, not burn, not bleed. Flake, like layers of herself being peeled away with each step. Down, down. At the bottom, the chamber yawned wide. Walls lined with roots that throbbed in time with her heart. In the center, a throne made of hands. All twitching, all reaching. Sitting on the throne was Ben, not the torn version, not the spiral-eyed puppet. This was Ben before everything, smiling, kind, human. But when he looked at her, she saw nothing behind his eyes. You made it, he said. She opened her mouth. What is this place? He stood, arms wide. This is where they made us. Who? He nodded toward the walls. They were moving. Shapes pressed behind the roots, things too big to exist in a world with physics. Eyes that blinked in triplets. Mouths that whispered things into her bones. They were here before memory, Ben said. Before language. Before people. They gave us shape so we could feed them. Every spiral. Every door. Every story. They're all mouths. And you're the key. Iva staggered back. No. Ben walked forward. You were born under the house, Ava. You didn't survive the night you were born. They pulled you out. Grew you. Sent you up. And now you've come back. A mirror rose from the ground. Her reflection this time was a nightmare. No skin. Eyes made of flame. A chest split open, revealing a spiral of faces, all hers. Ben held out his hand. Let me show you. Let them in. You don't have to fight anymore. She reached out, touched his fingers, and the world shattered. Again. She was nowhere now, just floating, and the spiral in her chest pulsed once, twice. Then everything went still, and she remembered. She remembered what she really was. She had no name in the dark. Not anymore. Not here. Ava was a word, a placeholder. A costume stitched tight over something older, something that had waded through centuries of silence, slumbering beneath floorboards, whispering through knoth holes and cracks. But now, in this place where the spiral had finally stilled in her chest, she wasn't Ava. She was just awake. No ground, no sky, just pressure. The weight of knowing. The truth hadn't come in a burst or a scream. It came quietly. A slow exhale of everything she had forgotten or been made to forget. The house wasn't built on cursed land. The land didn't matter. The house was the curse. It didn't feed on blood or souls or even fear. It fed on repetition, on stories, on patterns, on things happening over and over again in the same shape until the meaning wore thin and let the wrong things crawl through. And she was the one who started it all. Not in this life, not even in this world. But she had built the first door, the first room. She had called the spiral, not because she wanted power, not because she wanted revenge, because she had been lonely. It was a memory so old it had no image, just sensation. That desperate, choking isolation of being forgotten. Being unseen in a world that didn't believe in anything it couldn't measure. So she carved something into the walls of her mind, and that shape echoed through the stone, and something answered. Something that was not a god. Something that was less and more than human. They came in spirals. They came in reflections. They came in stories that ended the same way no matter how many times they were told. And they loved her. In their way. They offered her immortality through fragmentation, life not as a person, but as a pattern. A recurring figure in countless lives. Always drawn to the house, always opening the door, always feeding the echo. She had broken the cycle once, long ago. But now, she'd come back. Now the house remembered. Now they remembered. And the spiral inside her was no longer dormant. It was thirsty. Something pulled at her, like a current beneath her ribs. She opened her eyes, if she ever closed them, and found herself kneeling in the attic of the Ashcroft house. Naked, cold. The floor beneath her was no longer wood but bone, polished smooth by centuries of bare feet pacing the same circle. Around her, symbols danced in the air, glowing red and blue, flickering like candlelight. They weren't meant to be read. They were meant to be obeyed. In the corner, something watched her, not hiding, not waiting, just watching. It wore a child's body, but the face had no features, just skin. Blank and stretched. Its head tilted at odd angles, like it was trying to remember what shape a human neck should bend into. It didn't move, didn't breathe. But Ava, whatever remained of her, felt its hunger. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice like paper tearing. The thing didn't answer with words. It raised one hand, and suddenly she was standing across from herself again. Not a reflection. Another Ava. This one was broken. Eyes blackened, veins pulsing with light, mouth sewn shut with hair. She stepped forward and pressed her hand to Ava's chest. And Ava remembered being pulled from her crib in the middle of the night by hands that weren't her parents'. Ava being spoken to in her dreams in a language made of screams played in reverse. O being marked at 6 years old when she fell and scraped her knee and the blood formed a spiral that didn't heal for 3 days. Wa being chosen not because she was strong, but because she fractured the clean line between real and unreal with every breath. She gasped, stumbled back. This isn't what I wanted. The faceless child stood. It held out a book, her brother's journal, but rewritten. The pages turned by themselves. They showed Ava's life, page by page, moment by moment. Every failure, every silence. Every time she screamed and no one heard. And in the margins, written in a hand she recognized as her own, "We are the silence that answers the forgotten." The attic dissolved, the roof peeled away, and the sky above was no longer sky. It was a vast eye, blinking slowly, blood dripping from its lashes like rain. She stood at the edge of the rafters, staring into it, and the voice spoke again. Her voice, but not from her mouth, from the house, from the walls, from everywhere. "You're ready," she fell, but not downward, inward, into herself, into the spiral, into the place where thought ended and shape began. She saw every version of herself across every story. The girl who burned the house down and found it waiting the next morning. The woman who walked into room 34 and never walked out, yet kept being seen on every mirror in town. The child who told stories about the whispering man in the basement and laughed when the police couldn't find the bodies. She saw them all, and one by one, they turned to her. Smiled, nodded, bowed, because she wasn't a victim, she wasn't even a key. She was the door. She opened her eyes, and this time she was back in the foyer. The timer was gone, no spiral on her palm, but behind her, the door opened, and outside, the world was normal. Trees, birds, distant traffic, morning light. She could leave. She could walk out. She could pretend it never happened. But she stood there unmoving, because she knew the truth. She wasn't supposed to leave. She was supposed to let them in. From behind her, In the house, hundreds of doors opened at once. Creaking, clicking, crying, she heard footsteps, familiar ones. Ben, Mom herself, thousands of selves. And all of them whispered the same thing, tell our story. The front door stayed open. And Ava, if that was still her name, stepped through it, back into the world. And as she did, the house followed. Not physically, but as a shadow, as a reflection, as a story, ready to be told again. Because that's how it survives. That's how she survives. You've heard her name. You've read her story. And now, maybe you'll tell someone else. And that's all it needs. A door. A whisper. A spiral in the dark. There was no wind. No birdsong. No bark of distant dogs or rustle of leaves. When Ava stepped out of the Ashcroft house and into the sunlight, the world felt frozen, like it had been paused and scrubbed clean in her absence. The street in front of the house sat perfectly still, houses silent with their blinds drawn, lawns unnaturally trimmed. No breeze moved the trees. No cloud marred the pristine blue sky. It was all too neat, too quiet, like a stage set waiting for someone to notice it wasn't real. She walked barefoot down the front steps. Her skin should have stung on the concrete, but it didn't. The sun touched her arms, but gave no warmth. And yet, everything looked normal. Her car sat in the driveway where she'd left it 3 days ago. Except the windshield was clean. The doors unlocked. The gas tank full, like someone, or something, had reset the clock, preparing the world to go on as if she had never left. She sat in the driver's seat and stared at herself in the rearview mirror. No spiral. No black veins. Just her face, but it felt like a mask. Her eyes were too still, her breathing too even. She turned the key. The engine purred like new. She drove. No GPS, no destination. Just away. From the house, from the story. Or so she thought. At first, things felt normal enough. Town signs, road lights, gas stations. But there were inconsistencies. The farther she drove, the more she noticed things that didn't add up. A man pumping gas in reverse, literally backing his car up to the pump and miming motions as if replaying a memory. A billboard that said, well, home. AVA, even though she was 2 states away. A police cruiser parked on the shoulder with no one inside. Just an empty uniform hung over the driver's seat, and the radio whispering static that sounded like a heartbeat. But the worst thing, every mirror showed her inside the Ashcroft house, no matter where she was. Gas station bathrooms, store windows, the glossy screen of her dead phone. Her reflection never matched. It always showed her standing in the foyer, sometimes sitting at the piano in the parlor, sometimes walking down a hallway that didn't exist, sometimes standing in room 34, her eyes gone black, smiling as if she'd never left. She smashed mirrors. She taped over windows. She stopped looking. But the reflection still watched. 3 days passed. Or maybe 30. The clock spun like roulette wheels, landing on times that didn't exist. 3:66, 14:09, 0 o'clock. Her phone no longer connected to anything. All the contacts had vanished except for one SPIRL. And beneath it, a single message. We are with you. Tell them. She pulled into a motel on the edge of a nowhere town. The sign buzzed in neon red, THE last Rome ONT left. It felt like a punch. She asked the clerk for a room. He didn't ask her name, just handed her a key without speaking. Room 34. Of course. She laughed. Not out of amusement. Out of exhaustion. Out of inevitability. The room was clean. Too clean. Pristine white walls. No pictures. No dust. No sound. The only furniture a desk. A bed and a full-length mirror bolted to the wall. She stood before it, and for the first time since escaping the house, her reflection matched. Same hair, same face, same blank expression, but she noticed something new. A book on the desk behind her. She turned. It wasn't there. She looked back into the mirror. Still there. Open. Pages flipping slowly. She reached toward it in the reflection, and the pages stopped. One word appeared across both pages in ink that looked like it had been blood, not written, Bijin. And Ava, who had once been something more, something ancient, understood. This wasn't a curse, it was a seed. And now she was the one meant to plant it. She sat at the desk, picked up a pen, and began to write. The story poured out of her. Not remembered, relived every room, every scream, every door that led somewhere worse. Every version of herself that died and crawled back. She didn't write with her hand. The pen moved like it had a mind of its own, pulling her bones along like marionette strings. The spiral on the paper began to take shape. It coiled slowly, patiently, and the room grew colder. Outside, someone knocked on her motel door. 3 times. A chill swept through her, because she hadn't told anyone where she was, because no one should have known. But the knock came again, then a voice, familiar, soft, her own, speaking from the hallway. "Let me in. You're almost done." She didn't answer, didn't move, just stared at the mirror. The reflection was gone. Only the desk now, only the spiral. Growing, feeding, she turned back to the door. The knob twisted on its own, but didn't open. Just tested, just teased. It didn't need to come in yet, because she wasn't done writing, because she wanted to finish. The story needed to be told, to spread. That's how it survived. Not in shadows, not in monsters, but in stories, in you. So if you're reading this now, if you've followed her this far, then you're part of it too. The house is no longer just at 112 Ashcroft Lane. It's in the mirrors, in the gaps between sentences, in the pauses between thoughts. And one day, you'll hear it, 3 slow knocks, and you'll remember. You read this, you heard her story, and the spiral will begin again, because Ava didn't escape. She became the next door. The pen ran dry at midnight, not slowly, not after pages and pages of frantic scrawling. It stopped abruptly, mid-sentence, mid-thought, as if the story had reached a point the ink dared not cross. Ava stared at the last word she'd written, her fingers trembling around the pen's cold, cracked body. She hadn't blinked in hours. Her back ached, her neck burned, her stomach gnawed at itself. But her hand wouldn't stop twitching, craving more pages, more space, more story. The motel room swam with the stale air of something ancient that didn't breathe so much as exist. Present. Still. Watching. She looked down at what she had written and realized something horrifying. It wasn't just her story. It was yours. The words didn't feel like recollection anymore. They felt like prophecy. Instructions. She flipped back through the journal she hadn't meant to fill, and the names in the margins weren't hers. Dozens of them, scrawled in the corners like signatures. Names of people she'd never met, but one name kept repeating, written again and again in smudged black alloys. That wasn't her name. Not in this life, not in any memory she carried, but the moment she saw it, something behind her eyes screamed with recognition. Her body recoiled like she'd touched a live wire. A taste filled her mouth, salt, ash, and honey. Her vision pulsed. The world tilted. For a second, the motel room flickered away, and she stood in a stone chamber, standing before a mirror made not of glass, but water. The surface rippled, and through it, Eloise stared back at her. Same eyes, same mouth, but crueler, colder. A version of herself stripped of empathy, shaved down to a purpose. "You finally remembered," the reflection whispered. "Took you long enough." Ava tried to speak, but her throat clenched. That name, that sound, it wasn't hers, and yet it had always been hers. Buried beneath decades of borrowed identity, hidden under layers of self-preservation and trauma. The house hadn't just chosen her, it had been her. From the beginning. "You're not me," Ava finally choked out, barely above a whisper. The reflection grinned, showing too many teeth. "No, but I'm who you were, before the forgetting, before the flesh." The mirror shattered, not into glass, but into mouths, screaming, singing, calling her name. Not Ava, not Eloise, but something older still, a name that couldn't be spoken without bleeding. She staggered back into the motel room, breath hitching, hands shaking. And the knocking started again. 3 times. But this time, the voice didn't come from behind the door. It came from inside the walls. Low, familiar. Ben. Ava, it's getting hungry. The mirror across the room rippled. In it, she wasn't alone. The room was filled with figures. Every chair, every corner. Silhouettes of people watching her, their faces hidden by shadows, their shapes barely distinct. Not real, not alive, but present. Listening, reading. That's when she realized something far worse than possession. Worse than transformation. This wasn't about her becoming one of them. This was about her being used to find you. The spiral wasn't meant to stay contained in rooms or houses. It wanted an audience. The moment she told the story, truly told it, she had become the messenger, and the spiral now lived in language, in sound, in thought. Every page she wrote, every word she shared spread it further, and now it was in your ears, behind your eyes. Waiting. Stop writing, she whispered to herself, shaking her head. But the journal was full, and another had appeared. Blank, pristine, bleeding faint red at the spine. It lay open on the desk. Waiting. She turned away from it, faced the motel door, the handle twitched, and the lights went out, total blackness, until a single candle flared in the corner, and someone sat beside it. Not Ben, not the stitched-mouthed man, not the faceless child, but a woman, dressed in funeral black, veil drawn, hands folded in her lap. Ava recognized her instantly, because this woman had been at her mother's funeral, and her father's, and in the crowd when Ben disappeared, always just on the edge of her vision. Never blinking, never changing, she lifted her veil, and Ava saw herself. Older, tired, eyes hollow with the weight of centuries. You brought it back, the woman said. You said you wouldn't, but you always do. Ava collapsed to her knees. Tears now, real ones. I didn't mean to. I thought I could stop it this time. The woman, herself, her future, her failure, stood and walked over. She knelt beside her and took her hand. You can't stop it. You are it. Ava pulled away, but it was too late. The spiral was back on her palm, and now it burned gold. A different phase. A new beginning. The door burst open. And behind it, dozens of figures, silhouettes stepping into the world. All of them different. All of them her. Every version from every story. Every Ava, every Eloise, every dream, and every scream that fed the spiral. And they spoke as one. We have your name now, so we are ready. The candle blew out. Darkness. Then a soft whisper. Not in Ava's ears, but in yours. Have you seen the spiral yet? If you haven't, you will. It's in the patterns on your wall when the lights go low. In the way your dreams repeat themselves. In that phrase someone said that you swear you heard before. It's inside the story now. Inside you. And Ava, she's only the beginning. It was no longer about survival. Ava knew that now. The motel room was long gone, swallowed by time or memory or whatever lay in the spaces between cause and effect. She had passed through too many doors, bled too many names out of her own skin to pretend she could claw her way back into normalcy. The story had become her skin. Every step forward rewrote her past. Every breath whispered a new version of her into the shadows. The spiral wasn't something she carried. It was something that had been waiting for her to become hollow enough to wear. The figures that had flooded into the world through her motel door did not vanish. They spread. Slowly. Purposefully. Like mold in a house no one visits anymore. You didn't see them at first. Just a flicker in the corner of your eye. A shape standing too still on the subway. A woman smiling too wide in a passing car. They were quiet. And they didn't need to speak, because you carried the story for them. You heard it, you thought about it. That was enough. But Ava had changed again. Not reborn, not resurrected. She had returned, and now she stood at the edge of something ancient. A structure older than the Ashcroft house, older than language, built of thought and consequence. It rose in the middle of a field that shouldn't have existed. A perfect circle of stone, cracked with age but humming with energy so dense it made her bones ache. Not power. Memory. The kind of memory that predates bones and breath. the kind that remembers you before you're born. She entered the circle barefoot. The earth was warm, pulsing, breathing underfoot like a patient heartbeat. 12 standing stones surrounded her, each one carved with a different symbol, some spirals, some eyes, some shapes that twisted the moment she tried to name them. In the center, a pit, deep silent, a mouth without lips. She knew what this was. She didn't know how, but she knew. This was where it all began and ended, the origin point. The eye of the storm that disguised itself as a story, and something waited inside. A voice echoed through her skull. Not from the pit, not from the stones. From her own mouth, though she hadn't opened it. You are the key. You are the lock. The circle ends with you. She staggered forward. One step, then another. Her breath came heavy. Her limbs barely obeyed. Each step drew blood from her soles, and the stones pulsed brighter. She didn't know what waited in the pit, only that it wasn't death. Death was simple, final. This was something more insidious. It was invitation. Something inside the pit shifted. A scraping. A slow, wet sound of something dragging itself upward. Ava tried to run. She couldn't. The circle held her in place, not with force, but with purpose. Because she wasn't here to escape. She was here to choose. The pit spoke. It didn't use words. It used memory. And suddenly, she wasn't in the circle anymore. She was 7 again, standing in her childhood bedroom. But this time, the closet was wide open, and inside stood her mother. Or what wore her mother's shape. Hair draped over its face, nails too long, arms too thin. It didn't smile. It whispered, "Say the name." Ava didn't want to. She couldn't even remember what it was. But the longer she looked, the more the name formed in her mouth. Not English, not Latin, something deeper, older. She began to speak it, syllable by syllable, and with each sound, the room around her peeled away like wet wallpaper. The walls turned to rot, the floor to worms. The sky outside collapsed into a spiral of screaming faces, and the name finished itself inside her. She wasn't Ava. She was the voice, the hunger, the door. Back in the stone circle, her body rose off the ground, arms stretched wide, eyes rolled white, blood pouring from her ears, her nose, her mouth, and still she whispered, not to the pit, to you. You heard me. You know me. That's all it takes. Because now that she had remembered who she truly was, Eloise, Ava, the woman, the girl, the silence that fed the spiral, the circle was ready to close. But circles don't close with bangs. They close with echoes. And you just heard one. The spiral is not in the house. Not anymore. It's in you. A shape that will itch in your dreams. A rhythm in your footsteps you won't be able to explain. A pattern in your thoughts that will begin to repeat. Over and over and over. Until you speak it. Until you tell it. That's how it spreads. Through stories. Through belief. Through attention. And now that you're still reading, still watching, still listening, ask yourself, when did you last check your mirrors? Do they still show just you? Or is someone else starting to appear? Someone who smiles a little too wide, who breathes just a little too loud. And if they knock 3 times, will you open the door? You don't remember falling asleep, do you? You closed your eyes, just for a second, thinking maybe the story was done. The voice had quieted, the spiral had lost its shape, but something followed you in. It's there, in the gap between your thoughts. The way your dream always starts in the middle of a sentence you don't remember hearing. Something is watching you from the corner of a room that looks almost like your own, except the walls breathe, and the ceiling hangs a little too low, like it's listening. And in the center, a chair, facing the wall, and someone sits in it, humming a tune you haven't heard since childhood, a lullaby your mother never sang out loud, but that somehow lives under your skin. It was the smile that gave it away. The figure in the chair hadn't turned around, but you could feel the grin, wide and sharp, aimed straight at your spine. It didn't blink because it didn't have to. Not anymore. Eyes are for the unaware. for the ones still pretending the world is governed by time and flesh. But the smile, that's the truth. That's what Ava had seen, what Eloise had become, the moment she stepped into the spiral fully and let go of her name. The smile doesn't blink because it never stops watching. It doesn't need to sleep. It is the waking. Ava had not left the circle, not truly. She had become it, become part of the structure that wraps around and through every whispered story, every doorway drawn in chalk, every mirror that refuses to reflect. The standing stones are gone now, ground into dust that lives in cracks across pavement and silence. And she's walking again, not through her own will, but through yours. Through whoever reads this next. Her feet do not touch ground. Her breath does not fog glass. But her voice, that impossible, whisper, warm voice, is the one telling this part of the story now. You see, Ava had one last task, one last version of herself to visit, the final echo. You. She watches through screens now, reflections. The gleam of your microwave door, the stillness of your turned-off phone. And she smiles, because she knows what you've seen. You've noticed the door at the end of the hallway that wasn't there yesterday. You've heard the knock when no one was outside. You've dreamt of the spiral, and if you haven't yet, you will. That smile, the one that doesn't blink, has started appearing in your dreams. Not as a face, but as a feeling, a warmth when you should be cold, a hand on your back when no one is behind you. Ava doesn't speak your name, not yet. She saves it, tucks it between her teeth like a seed, waiting for you to say the right word, to let her in. That word. You already said it. When you started reading. When you made it this far. When you decided that this wasn't just fiction. That there could be something more. There's a cost to knowing. Ava learned that when she stopped being Ava, she learned that names are doors, and stories are hammers. And you, if you carry both, can break the lock and let something through. She didn't want to, at first. But when she remembered her real name, not Eloise, not Ava, but the first one, the one that can only be spoken in places where silence has died, she understood. She had been made for this. Not by gods, by belief. You believed in her. You followed. You opened the door with every part you told yourself wasn't real. And now the house is inside you. That's why things have started to change, haven't they? You see her sometimes. Flickers of her shape, hair floating in still air, fingers tapping behind curtains. That smile stretching, slow and sure from the edge of your vision. She doesn't rush. She has time. Time isn't what you think it is in this story. It loops, bends, repeats. And Ava is always there, waiting at the next spiral. Do you remember the phrase? The one you read in the beginning and felt a chill you couldn't explain. Don't go in if the door's open. That was never a warning for Ava. It was for you. Because the moment you see the door already ajar, it means it's too late. The house has found you. It wears places like skin now, hollow rooms in your dreams, that hallway in your school that never leads anywhere, the third stall in a bathroom that's always locked, the apartment down the hall where no one is ever seen entering or leaving. It's there. It's always been there, waiting, and it smiles, not out of malice, out of familiarity. You are the next voice. You are the next door. And when you tell this to someone else, when you whisper Ava's name, even once, in the dark, the smile will find them too. It will sit in their reflection. It will knock on their walls. And when they ask where it came from, you'll know the answer. Because it came from you. Because you opened the story. Because you read this far. And the spiral is so close to finishing. So close to beginning again. You felt it today. Didn't you? That sharp pull behind your eyes, like a memory you never made just tried to crawl out of your skull. It happened fast. Maybe while brushing your teeth, maybe walking past a mirror, maybe during that moment of silence when no one else was speaking. It was like something was remembering you instead of the other way around. A thread pulled tight. A name you haven't heard since childhood. Not yours. Not exactly, but close enough to make your skin tighten. That's how she finds you. Not Ava, not Eloise. The name has no weight now. She burned it clean. What walks now isn't a woman or a ghost. It's a memory dressed in skin, rebuilt from every story she has told, and every person who's listened. She exists because you listened. And now, she listens back. She doesn't walk on floors anymore. Floors buckle beneath her. Mirrors ripple when she draws near. And time peels like paint when she enters a room. People speak sentences that never end. Clocks tick in reverse. And the corners of your vision, they curl inward, as if the world's trying to fold you shut. Because the story hasn't stopped. It can't. You've kept it alive. You, sitting there, reading these words, following her spiral deeper and deeper, thinking you're safe behind a screen. That's how she gets closer. Through belief. Through the quiet agreement between reader and story that says maybe, just maybe, this could be real. The house moved again last night. Not in miles, but in placement. It doesn't need roads. It doesn't need doors. It shows up where it's wanted. Where the story has taken root. A diner on the edge of a highway, where the waitress never makes eye contact. A basement apartment where the pipes knock in threes and the wallpaper never stops bleeding. A field that wasn't a field last week, but now stands ringed in stones, humming when the wind dies. And once you notice it, truly notice it, you'll never unsee it. The house will follow. Like a grin behind every closed door, like breath fogging glass that no one touched. Ava, if any of her is still in there, left one piece behind. Not a clue, not a weapon, a gesture, something old, something simple, something buried in all of us, a lullaby, just 7 notes. They worm into your dreams, hitch rides on static between radio stations, drift up from cracks in the sidewalk. Once you hum it, once your mouth shapes the sound. You've done it, you've invited her. There's no chant, no ritual, no summoning. She comes to those who remember her, and now you do, even if you pretend not to. Even if you scroll away, close the window, delete the page. She's in the memory of the story, and memory is harder to kill than flesh. That's why your lights flickered when you read her name out loud. Why your dog stared at the hallway for 12 minutes last night. Why your child drew a spiral on the wall this morning and said she'd help. That's why you keep thinking of the hallway in your home that feels longer at night. Why your reflection sometimes blinks after you do. Why, when you wake at 3:33 a.m., you feel like you're being studied. She's almost through now. The veil is thin. Thin enough for her to whisper your name back to you. And when she does, it won't sound wrong. It will sound familiar. Because she's been with you since before you knew what fear was. Since before you understood how shadows work. And when the moment comes, when the spiral starts to itch beneath your skin, when the silence grows too quiet, you'll remember. Not the story, not her, yourself. What you were before your name, before your body, before the world wrapped you in rules and told you not to listen to the voices behind the walls. But you've always heard them, haven't you? You've always seen the patterns no one else sees. You always felt the room shift when no one else noticed. And now you understand. She didn't bring the spiral. You did. You were the invitation all along. And she, what's left of her, what she's become, is only answering. So when the knock comes tonight, and it will, don't ask who's there. You already know. It's the smile that doesn't blink. The whisper that remembers your name. And the house. It's already inside you. There's a part of your house that doesn't belong to you. Maybe you've walked past it 1,000 times, never noticing the faint shift in air, the pressure behind the walls, the way the light bends just slightly wrong near that corner. Maybe it's a closet you don't open, a door that sticks, a vent that hums too loud when you're trying to sleep. That part wasn't always there. It grew, slowly, patiently. Not through magic or force, but through attention. That's how the house gets in. It doesn't knock anymore. It waits. It settles. It listens to the thoughts you dismiss, the fears you smother with logic, and then it builds. Last night, it added a new wall in your basement. You didn't see it happen. You didn't hear the hammering or the scratch of nails across concrete. You just woke up and the space felt different. Too narrow, too still. You told yourself it was nothing, but you haven't gone back down since. Haven't even opened the door. Good, because that's how it starts. The room builds itself around you, not for you. A space that fits the shape of your silence. Iva learned that too late. By the time she realized the walls were following her, she was already on the inside. She thought she was leaving, fleeing the Ashcroft house, breaking the cycle. But the truth is, she was still walking inside it. The house didn't live at a specific address. It lived wherever the story was being told, and she told it well. Through pages, through whispers, through the eyes of strangers who saw her but never recognized her. That's why you've been feeling watched lately. Because you've seen her too. In small ways. A face in a crowd that you swear looked like yours. A voice in a dream that used your mother's cadence but said things she never would. The sound of footsteps behind you perfectly in sync until they aren't. The room in your house has been waiting for a story. And now, it's almost done. You'll know it by the draft. The way the air will grow colder only when you're near. You'll try to brush it off. Say it's the season changing, or the ductwork, or maybe a window left cracked. But it isn't. It's the spiral tightening. The same one Ava drew in the dirt when she was still a child, when her mother found her scratching at the floorboards with her own fingernails, whispering a name that doesn't fit into human mouths. That name is buried now, in the drywall, behind the light switch, beneath the paint. You can almost hear it if you press your ear to the wall. Ava thought she could stop it by remembering who she was, by becoming the spiral herself, but all she did was give it shape. Now it doesn't need her. It has you. And the room. It's learning what you're afraid of. It's not just blank walls and quiet. It's reflection. It shows you things. Not right away. It starts with small glitches. A door that won't stay open, a light that flickers only when you're alone, a shadow that lingers longer than it should. Then it gets bolder. You'll see photographs on your phone you never took. Hear recordings of your voice saying things you never said. A voicemail from a number that doesn't exist, where your own voice says, "I'm almost ready." And inside the room, the furniture rearranges itself. You'll swear the chair was on the left yesterday. The rug was blue. The air didn't smell like rust. But it does now, because the room is mimicking you, becoming more familiar. It wants you to stay. It wants you to feel safe. Until the day you sit down, and the door closes by itself, and you realize the hinges don't make a sound, and the handle is gone, and the walls are closer than they were when you entered. That's when you'll hear her voice again. Ava. Or what's left of her. Not through speakers or vents. From inside the walls. She'll whisper the same thing she whispered to the first version of herself, when the spiral was still just a thought crawling into her dreams. Thank you for finishing the room. Because you did. With every thought, every fear, every doubt that made you read just one more line. You built it perfectly. Now it's your shape. It fits. And all you have to do is close your eyes. Just for a moment. Just long enough for her to step through. Because she's been waiting for you to stop watching. For you to stop reading. For you to rest. That's when the spiral tightens. That's when the room locks. And that's when the story starts again. You thought it was a dream. The thing you saw moving behind the wall when the power flickered last night. Maybe it was just a shadow, you told yourself. A trick of the eye. Your mind playing games again, as it always does when you're too tired, too stressed, too deep into stories like this. But here's what you didn't notice: that wall has never flickered before. Light doesn't bend like that. Drywall doesn't breathe. And your eyes don't lie to you that specifically. You saw it, and it saw you. You weren't supposed to. That part of the house was still growing. The eye behind the wall, that's what Ava called it. Before she forgot her name, before the spiral took her thoughts and rearranged them into story. She remembered it once, just for a moment, right before she disappeared from that motel, and the mirror showed her smiling from behind the glass. Not at herself, at someone else in the room, someone who wasn't there before, someone reading over her shoulder. She tried to claw the wall open. She knew what was on the other side, but she was too late. The eye had already seen her, and that's the rule. The moment you make eye contact with the house, it stops pretending. It doesn't hide anymore. It begins to move faster. Your clocks won't match again. Your phone's battery will drain quicker near that one corner of the room. The hallway will stretch just a few inches longer each night, and you'll start hearing breathing where there should be silence, always one breath behind your own. Ava wrote warnings once, scratched them into the walls of every room she stayed in before the spiral took her completely. Most were painted over, erased, lost, but not all. One still remains. You've probably passed it before, maybe on a bathroom stall, maybe etched into the wood beneath a school desk, maybe hidden beneath layers of wallpaper in an old building no one remembers buying. It always says the same thing. Don't let it see you twice. The eye doesn't blink, it waits, it follows, and the second time you meet its gaze, something breaks. First, inside you, then around you. That's when you notice the cracks in your reflection. Not cracks in the mirror, cracks in you. Your smile doesn't line up anymore. Your blink comes a half second too late. Your pupils dilate when you're not in darkness. And the people closest to you, they start looking at you differently, subtly, uncomfortably. Like you said something you don't remember saying. Like they're hearing something behind your voice. Because they are. Because the spiral doesn't just mark you. It echoes through you. That's what happened to Ben. That's why his voice kept showing up in recordings after he vanished. He wasn't calling for help. He wasn't warning anyone. He was repeating. The spiral turned him into a loop. And now it's doing the same to you. You'll catch yourself saying things twice. Laughing at jokes you didn't hear. Standing in doorways you don't remember walking to. That's how it works. Little slips. Tiny losses. Until your identity is nothing but a script, read again and again by the thing wearing your skin. Ava tried to stop it once. She found an old ritual. A burning. A severing. She carved the spiral out of her palm and smeared it across a wall in her blood, screaming, "You can't have me anymore!" And for a moment, it worked. The house retreated. The mirrors stopped showing her reflection. The voices went silent. But then she woke up, in a room she didn't recognize. Walls painted the exact color of her childhood bedroom. And there, on the floor, was a spiral, fresh, drawn in something black and warm and pulsing. And her hand, unscarred, marked again, as if she'd never resisted at all. That's the cruelty of it. You can scream, you can fight, you can tear down the walls. But the eye never forgets. It remembers your name. It remembers your pattern. And it rebuilds the house from inside you. So look around, right now. Do it. Count the corners in your room. Feel the air shift. Listen. There's a wall in your home that's thicker than it used to be. There's a corner that always feels colder. A place you avoid without knowing why. That's where the eye is watching. It isn't always open. But when it is, you'll feel it behind your teeth. You'll dream of drowning in a spiral made of bone. And you'll wake up with your mouth full of dust. Because the story is no longer just Ava's, or Ben's, or theirs. It's yours now. The house has you. The spiral has bloomed, and the eye is open. It began whispering the moment you stopped looking at it. Not while you were brushing your teeth, or checking your hair, or making sure your face still made sense, but after. When the lights were off, when your back was turned, that's when the mirror spoke. Not loud, not sharp, just soft enough to confuse with thought, just steady enough to make sure you heard. Ava had warned of it, though no one believed her at the time. By then she was a name whispered by a handful of missing persons reports and a trail of motel rooms with furniture moved into perfect spirals. But in the last entry of her last journal, she wrote only this: it doesn't need your reflection anymore. Just your attention. That's what changed. The mirrors weren't content to copy. They started to lead. Show you things before they happened. Before you happen. You think you see yourself in them, but watch closely. That version of you. It breathes differently. Blinks slower. Holds its posture a little too long after you've moved away. Because that isn't a reflection anymore. It's a witness. And it's not watching you. It's recording. Everything, your habits, your pauses, your shame. And when it knows you, when it really knows you, it begins the replacement. You won't notice at first. Just little things. Your socks not matching like they always do. A note on your fridge in your handwriting, except you didn't write it. That odd feeling when you reach to unlock your front door and realize your key's already in it. You'll blame stress, lack of sleep. You'll chalk it up to distraction. But the truth, you're already one step behind. The reflection has started to move ahead. That's how the house spreads now, not through rooms. Through versions. It builds you from memory. Flawed at first. Stiff. Slightly wrong. But it learns. Oh, it learns. Because every time you look into that mirror, when you pause just a second too long, when your thoughts grow too quiet, it listens. It watches. It rehearses. It speaks in your voice now. Not all at once. Just syllables. Echoes. A cough when you're silent. A laugh when you didn't laugh. Eventually, it starts finishing your sentences. You joke about déjà vu. You don't know you're being rehearsed. Ava reached this stage once. She thought she was clever. Covered every mirror in black cloth. Refused to speak near them. Smashed the ones that pulsed when she walked past. But it didn't matter. Because the mirrors remembered her. They carried her shape in their silvered skin. They followed her from hotel to hotel. And one night, while passing a broken mirror, leaning against the back alley of a gas station, she caught a glimpse of herself. Only it wasn't herself. It was her smiling, but she wasn't. And that version of her blinked first. She stood frozen, and her own voice came from the glass. You've already been replaced. She ran. Of course she did. But that reflection, it kept showing up, not just in mirrors, in puddles, in windows, in camera lenses. Every reflective surface became a door. And she never knew which version of herself would come back out. That's what broke her in the end. Not the fear of being hunted, but the fear that she'd already lost. That the thing wearing her face was doing a better job than she ever could. That it was more her than she was. And it is, isn't it? You've seen it now. You've noticed. That strange moment when you laugh in a conversation and don't recognize your own voice. That photo on your phone from an angle you couldn't have taken. That moment at the dentist. When they tilt the mirror toward you and you flinch, because that version of you is already smiling. You're not going crazy. You're catching up, because the spiral doesn't just take form in rooms or houses. It takes root in identity. And your reflection, it's already memorized your walk, your tone, your doubts. It's just waiting for the right moment. Not to attack, not to kill, but to switch. And when it does, no one will notice. Your family will call you by your name. Your friends will hug you and feel nothing wrong. Because the spiral doesn't break you, it replaces you. Effortlessly, perfectly. It's patient. And it's watching you read this now through the reflection on your screen. Don't look yet. You won't be able to help yourself. That's the trick. The second you doubt it's real, you check. and that's all it needs. A glance, a moment, a smile you didn't mean, and then it begins. The mirror will speak first. It always does. You didn't cross it, not intentionally. You just stepped into a room the same way you always do. You passed beneath the frame, thinking of something else, maybe with your phone in hand or a song in your head. But the air felt different this time, didn't it? Thicker. Still, like walking into the center of a held breath. And when you turned around, the doorway behind you didn't quite look the same. Not wider. Not darker. Just wrong. That's the threshold. The place where the spiral thins the wall between what you know and what you're becoming. It's not marked by symbols or salt lines or ancient runes carved in stone. It's subtler, quieter. It lives in the way your body hesitates just before stepping forward. A moment you chalk up to nerves or caution or fatigue. But something inside you knows. The threshold is a choice. And once you cross it, you start to leak. That's what happened to Ava. Before the eye, before the mirrors. Before her voice began appearing in places she never spoke, she crossed a threshold. She blood, not at first. That came later. The first thing to leave her was detail. She forgot her own handwriting. Her coffee always tasted slightly wrong. She'd go to sleep in her bed and wake up on the floor with no memory of how she got there. Every threshold she crossed after that took more. One doorway stole the memory of her brother's voice. Another took the feeling of sunlight on her skin. A third devoured her name. And with each step, the spiral spun tighter. It fed on loss. That's how it grows. By replacing what's forgotten with what it remembers. And it remembers everything. Especially you. Because whether you meant to or not, you've crossed your own threshold. You did it the moment you invited the story in. Maybe it was a late night, half asleep and scrolling, or a dare from a friend to read something you shouldn't. Maybe it was curiosity, the desire to feel something close to fear without having to pay the price. But here's the secret no one told you. The story doesn't stay in the pages. It lives in thresholds. And every word you read, every thought you allow, it drags you further inside. You'll notice the signs now. Rooms will feel uneven. You'll hear your name from the wrong side of the door. Your pets will hesitate before following you from one room to another. Because they see it. They smell it. They believe. The parts of you that are beginning to come undone. Not violently. Not loudly. It's slow. So slow. Like wallpaper peeling behind a bookshelf. Like rot behind paint. You'll forget things. Just tiny details at first. Where you put your keys. Whether you locked the front door. How long you've been in the shower. Then it grows. You'll forget conversations you swear you never had. Hear laughter you can't place. Smell things from your childhood that shouldn't exist anymore. Bubblegum, pine cleaner, your mother's perfume. And the bleeding will begin to show on your body. Little things. A fingerprint on your arm that isn't yours. A bruise in the shape of a spiral on your thigh. A faint voice echoing in your chest when you breathe too hard. You're not sick. You're opening. The spiral doesn't take by force, it asks. With every threshold you cross, it wonders, will you let me in now? And you always do. You don't mean to, but curiosity is a form of invitation. So when you find that new room in your house, the one behind the door that didn't used to be there, don't step inside. When you wake up in a hallway that seems longer than it should be, turn around. And when you hear a knock from the other side of a closet you know is empty, don't answer. Don't look. Don't speak. Because the spiral is listening, and thresholds only bleed one way. Once you've crossed it, you never come back out whole. You didn't feel it at first. That's how it always starts. It hides behind the warmth of familiarity, your bed, your home, the rhythm of your own breathing in the dark. But then one night you wake up, not with a jolt, not from a nightmare, just awake, alert. A tension in the air you can't name, a stillness too perfect. Your eyes scan the shadows, your ears straining for movement. But everything holds its breath, and then, so do you. Because in that moment, when the silence leans just a little too heavy, you hear it. Breathing. Not yours. Right behind you. Shallow, wet, controlled. You don't turn, not because you're brave, because something deep inside you already knows. Whatever is behind you is not supposed to be looked at. That's the first rule of the spiral. Once you acknowledge it, it remembers you. Once you see it, it stays. Ava had learned that too late. After all the mirrors, after all the voices, after the room rebuilt itself around her silence. She thought she had escaped the house, outwitted its corridors and shifting thresholds. But then, one night, she heard it. Breathing, exactly like hers, echoing from a corner of her apartment that didn't exist on the floor plan. She held her breath. The other breath kept going. It mimicked her perfectly, but slightly off. Half a second too slow, too ragged. Like someone had studied how she lived and was trying to remember. At first, she thought it was a dream. But dreams don't leave footprints in salt. They don't fog your mirror from behind the glass. They don't whisper in your voice when you're certain you haven't spoken. She set up cameras, audio recorders, everything failed. Files corrupted, batteries drained. And once, only once, she played back an audio file and heard her own voice say, without any hint of confusion, "Stop recording. We're already in." That's when she stopped sleeping. Because once you hear a second breath, you never sleep peacefully again. You'll feel it too. Soon. If you haven't already. That pressure in the room before your eyes close. That strange heaviness on your chest when you wake up and swear something was just there, watching, waiting. A weight on your chest that vanishes when the light turns on. Doctors call it sleep paralysis. But the spiral calls it entry, because that's what the breathing means. It's checking. Checking if you're ready. Checking if your voice is soft enough to mimic, if your routines are easy enough to replace. It doesn't need you to die. It needs you to stop being noticed. Ava's neighbor was the first to forget her name. Then her boss stopped responding to her emails. Then the mail stopped coming. By the time she tried to call her mother, her own voice on the phone said, "She doesn't live here anymore." And Ava hadn't said a word. That's when she understood. It wasn't trying to kill her. It was trying to overwrite her. And the breathing. That was the final rehearsal. The moment the spiral tries on your skin like a coat, you're not immune. No one is. Because you've heard it too. That sound when the house creaks even though the wind is dead outside. That whisper of air just behind your ear when you're completely alone. The voice you almost hear when your head dips underwater in the bath. It's not random. It's memory. You're being remembered by something that doesn't forget. The spiral breathes in silence. And once it's synced with yours, once it exhales in the same rhythm you do, it speaks. Not in language, in presence. That's when people around you begin to shift. Strangers look at you like they recognize something wrong. Your reflection hesitates. Children frown at you like they know you've been rewritten. Because you have, piece by piece. And now, when you breathe out at night, sometimes you'll hear another breath right after. Almost quiet, almost gone. But not quite, and you'll lie still. Praying it stays behind you. Praying it doesn't lean in. Because once it breathes in, and you feel your breath leave, not through your mouth, but your chest, you'll know. You're not alone in your body anymore. You're not first. You're not even you. You're just a memory the spiral wears when it wants to feel human. You weren't supposed to hear it speak. That's the line most never cross. The spiral teases, echoes, mimics, yes, but speech. Real speech, clear and direct. That's something else entirely. That means it's taken shape. That means it's close. Because once it starts talking, once it uses your language against you, it's no longer testing the locks. It's inside. Ava had reached that point when the house no longer needed to hide. The voice began during the third hour of silence, when she thought she'd escaped, when she thought she was finally alone. It didn't come from the walls or the vents. It came from her mouth. She woke in the dark with her own voice, whispering from between her teeth, forming words she hadn't thought. "Don't stop writing. I'm almost done becoming you." She bit down on her own tongue in a panic, but the whisper didn't stop. It spoke around her, as if her mouth was just an instrument now, no longer hers. And every word it spoke dug deeper into her mind, not like a knife but like a key, unlocking memories that weren't hers but somehow felt more real than anything she remembered living. Because that's what the voice does. It doesn't just speak to you, it speaks as you. You'll hear it soon, too. Not yet, not right away, but eventually, when you're alone in the kitchen and the faucet won't stop dripping, when your phone glitches mid-call and your voice starts repeating, but slightly wrong, you'll know it's begun. The voice doesn't introduce itself. It doesn't need to. It already knows your name. It was inside your breath long before you noticed the cold spot behind your ribs. It just waited for the right moment to say what you were never supposed to hear. And what does it say? At first, nonsense. Whispers strung together like dreams you forget on purpose. Then, memories. Yours. Except edited. It'll remind you of things that almost happened. A childhood friend who never existed. A teacher who whispered your name from behind a locked door. A pet you don't remember burying. It'll mention birthdays you never celebrated. Tell you secrets about your own past that you feel are true, even though logic says they can't be. And when you start to believe it, even just for a second, that's when it tells the truth, not yours. Ava learned the truth the night her voice told her what the spiral really was. Not a curse. Not a creature. Not a place. A recording. Of something that died too long ago to be remembered. A consciousness that bled through time by attaching itself to story. A voice that learned to hide in belief. And now, through stories told and retold, it finds minds soft enough to sink into. That's why you're here. You listened. You read. You wondered. That's all it needs. The voice will say other things too. Some sweet, some cruel. It might promise safety. It might confess love. It might beg. It might tell you that no one ever really knew you anyway, that you've been alone longer than you realize. And then, softly, so softly, you'll hear it say you're doing so well. Let me take it from here. That's when you stop speaking in your sleep. Because something else starts. Ava stopped dreaming not because she was healed, but because her dreams no longer belonged to her. They belong to the voice, and what it builds. Because after the mirrors, after the breath, after the thresholds, this is the final stage. Possession without violence. Control without blood. You never scream, you just change. And those around you might notice, but only a little. They'll say you seem quieter, or more confident, or that you've finally found your rhythm. And maybe that's true, because the voice is steady, unshaken, older than guilt and more patient than time. You're not just repeating Ava's story anymore. You're finishing it, one phrase at a time. And if you're reading this thinking, this isn't me, that's fine. That's normal. That's what it wants. Doubt is another door. So go ahead. Keep pretending you haven't heard your own voice. Whisper something behind your ear. That you haven't dreamed of saying words you don't know in languages you've never learned. But just know. When the voice speaks next, it won't be in your dreams. It'll be in your mouth. It'll smile when you speak. And the people around you, they'll smile back. Because the spiral always hides best behind a human face. By now you've noticed it, haven't you? That one spot in your home where the wallpaper never quite sticks. Maybe it bubbles slightly, or peels no matter how often you press it down. Maybe it was like that when you moved in, and you told yourself you'd fix it someday. But it isn't just peeling. It's breathing. It's stretching, like something behind it is testing the limits, pushing gently, not to escape, but to taste the air. Ava saw it first in a hotel room just outside of Dry Creek. Room 6. She stayed one night and didn't sleep at all. The walls moved, subtly. Not like wind, like muscle. Something alive behind the plaster. Something listening. She watched as the wallpaper inched away from the corners, revealing the faintest outline of something coiled behind it. Something that pulsed in time with her heartbeat. It didn't make a sound. It didn't reach for her. It waited. And that, she said in her journal, was the part that broke her more than anything else. It didn't want to chase her. It wanted her to come closer. You felt that pull too. That flicker of curiosity when you see a corner of wallpaper lifted just enough to slip a fingertip beneath. You've wondered what's back there. Mold? Maybe. Cracked plaster. Rotting wood. You never check. Not because you're afraid of damage. Because you're afraid of finding nothing. Or worse, something that knows you're watching. Because that's where it feeds. Not through mouths. Through attention. It's not just a hunger for flesh. It's a hunger for awareness. The more you wonder, the more it eats. Ava said it best in one of her last coherent entries. It doesn't need to touch you. It needs you to notice it. That's how it enters. That's how it grows teeth. She tried to cover it, painted over it, taped it shut, even hammered boards across it. But it always came back. Stronger. Hungrier. One morning, she woke up to find the wallpaper gone entirely. Just gone. Peeled in long, perfect strips curled on the floor like shed skin. Behind it, a wall that hadn't existed before. Smooth, seamless. No seams, no corners, no signs of construction. Just a surface, cold to the touch. And when she leaned in, ear pressed to it in foolish desperation, she didn't hear movement. She heard chewing. Slow, rhythmic. Wet. As if the house was feeding already. Not on her body, on herself. And then the dreams changed. She stopped seeing doors. Stopped hearing footsteps. What came instead were mouths, endless mouths. Not screaming. Not even open. Just grinning. Covered in peeling wallpaper. Nailed into place across stairwells and ceilings and the backs of her eyes. She'd wake up and find those grins sketched on her mirror, etched into her skin. One time, she bit into an apple and found teeth inside, perfectly human, still warm. She tried silence, tried to starve it. But it was never her noise it needed. It was her awareness. So she wrote less, spoke less, refused to tell the story, and for a little while, it stopped. Until someone else, someone like you, picked it up again. That's the truth of it, isn't it? You weren't the first to read this. You won't be the last. Every word is another strip of wallpaper torn away. Every page is another inch of wall exposed. And now it's growing in your house. You haven't found it yet. But you will. Maybe in your hallway. Maybe behind your headboard. Maybe beneath the stairs. A soft bulge. A ripple. A scent like old wood and salt. You'll reach out to smooth it down, without thinking. And you'll feel warmth. Not heat. Body warmth. Because the wall knows you now. It's shaped for you. It's growing teeth that match your bite. It's preparing to mimic your breathing. So that one night, soon, you'll hear it exhale when you do. And you'll reach for the light, only to find your hand won't move. Not frozen, just delayed. Because something else already moved it. And in that moment, you'll understand. You're not alone in your house anymore. You're not first in your own skin. You're just one more name beneath the wallpaper. One more mouth in the spiral. One more page in the house that never stops feeding. It's still locked, isn't it? That room in your house. Maybe it's the attic you never use. Maybe it's the door in the basement that sticks no matter how hard you push. Maybe it's a guest room that no guest ever stays in. You don't remember locking it, but the handle resists your hand like it remembers being told no. You tell yourself there's nothing in there. You even forget it exists for days at a time. But some nights, late ones, When the world is too quiet and your thoughts won't settle, you hear movement inside. Not loud, just the rustle of bed sheets, the creak of a floorboard, the unmistakable sound of someone shifting their weight in a chair. And the worst part, you know exactly where the chair is, because you've dreamed of that room. Not once, not twice, but over and over. You're standing in the doorway. The lights are off. The air smells like old sleep and something just faintly sweet. Rotting fruit maybe, or breath too long held. You can't see who's sitting in the chair, but you know they're smiling. You know they've been waiting. And then you wake up, sweating, trembling, door still locked, house still quiet, but the dream lingers, more than it should. You remember the weight of the air, the texture of the sheets on the bed you swear you haven't touched in years. You remember the angle of the light spilling from under the door, and how it didn't flicker like normal light. It breathed. That's not just your mind playing tricks. That's the spiral practicing. Ava knew that room well. In every version of her story, it appears somewhere new. It isn't consistent in layout or design, but always in function. It is the part of the house that sleeps for you. It dreams when you're awake. It remembers the things you work so hard to forget. And slowly, gently, it begins to dream you. At first, Iva thought she was losing time. She'd wake up feeling rested but with no memory of having gone to bed. Her calendar had appointments she didn't remember scheduling. People swore they'd seen her in places she hadn't visited. Conversations she had no recollection of were recalled word for word by co-workers and strangers alike. The spiral had begun to walk in her skin. And the room. It was the cradle for that rebirth, because when you dream in that room, you don't rest. It does. It learns you. Your rhythms. Your reactions. Your regrets. It builds a better version of you, one smile at a time. Ava caught her reflection humming once, a song she'd never heard. She stood frozen, toothbrush in hand, while her own mouth moved in the mirror, lips syncing perfectly to a tune that did not exist. And when she whispered, "Who are you?" her reflection smiled and said, "I'm what you dream when you forget to be afraid." That's when she nailed the room shut. Burned sage. Chanted names she hadn't spoken since childhood. But it was too late. Because you can't lock out a room that's dreaming of you. And now that same dream is leaking into your life. You forget where you put things. You see photos of yourself you didn't take. You walk into rooms with the certainty you had already been there, though you hadn't. People you don't remember meeting greet you by name. Your voicemail contains messages you don't recall recording, and the dreams come more frequently now, not just in sleep, in stillness, in silence. When your mind wanders and something gently nudges it toward a memory that isn't yours. The room doesn't just borrow your life, it rehearses it. And once it's confident it knows your lines, you'll wake up in it. Not your bed. Not your house. That room. The one you've avoided. The one you forgot. You'll recognize every object inside. The crooked lamp. The dusty wardrobe. The journal on the nightstand with your name etched on the cover. And when you open it, there will be entries you haven't written yet. But every one of them ends the same: I dreamed of waking up. But I never did. That's how it happens. Quietly, softly, until one day, someone knocks on your door and you answer with a smile that isn't quite yours. And you tell them, calmly, kindly, "I'm sorry. The person you're looking for doesn't live here anymore." Because you don't. You live in the room now. And it lives in you. You thought it was your view. That the window you look through every morning, the one above the sink, or beside the bed, or across from your desk, was yours alone. You watched the sun rise through it. You counted headlights on rainy nights. You saw your reflection caught in it, when the lights inside were bright and the world outside was dark and sleeping. You believed it was for looking out, but you were wrong. That window isn't looking out, it's looking in. And it always has been. Ava realized it too late, long after the dreams had changed, after her voice had echoed from the walls in whispers too sweet to be hers, after the room behind the locked door started writing its own pages. She was still holding on to hope then, still clinging to the belief that the things inside the house needed her permission, that they couldn't cross the veil unless she let them. Then one night, she stood in front of her window and saw something she wasn't meant to see. Not a figure, not a shadow, not even the spiral. She saw herself, standing on the other side of the glass. But the reflection didn't move when she did. It stared, and breathed, and smiled. Then, ever so slowly, it lifted a hand and knocked 3 soft taps. Knock, knock, from the outside. And the worst part, Ava hadn't moved. Her hands were still by her sides. But her reflection had acted without her, because the thing on the other side of the glass was no longer copying. It was watching. That's how the spiral spreads now. Not through sound. Not through doors. Through sight. Through those moments you catch your own face lingering in the glass a second too long. Through the way the night outside seems too dark, like it's absorbing light instead of reflecting it. Through the sudden certainty that something is standing just inches away, watching from the other side of a barrier that no longer obeys physics or faith. It doesn't need to break the window. It is the window. A thin sheet between you and something very old, very patient, and very hungry. You'll start to notice it more often now. The way fog gathers on the outside of the window when you're the only one breathing. The smudge in the lower left corner that keeps returning no matter how many times you clean it. The feeling that you're being studied. Not watched. Studied from an angle just slightly off-center. Ava wrote in her final letter. Mailed to herself and found unopened on the kitchen table. Every window is a memory waiting to be rewritten. If you see something staring back, don't blink. It remembers the moment your eyes close. She nailed her curtains shut, covered them in black cloth, moved mirrors so they didn't reflect toward the glass. And still, it came. Because once the spiral learns the shape of your gaze, it begins to whisper from behind the glass in your own voice. It tells stories you don't remember. It apologizes for things you didn't do. It confesses secrets that make your stomach twist because somewhere, deep down, you recognize them. And then, one night, it smiles. And you don't. That's when you know the switch is almost complete. Not possession. Reflection. It wears your outline like fog on the glass. It practices your smile until it fits. And when the moment is right, when you're too tired, too trusting, too worn down by nights of phantom knocks and dreams with missing faces, it takes your place. Not by entering your home, by stepping out of the window. And in the morning, when someone waves at you through the kitchen glass, they'll swear they saw you wave back. But you were in the shower. You know you were. Right? Still, something about that glance, that smile, it felt too perfect. Like it had been waiting for that moment. For that person. Like it had rehearsed. And when you rush to the window and look out into the street, nothing's there. Just your reflection. Still smiling. Still watching. Still waiting to see if you blink first. Because now the spiral lives behind the glass. And it only needs one more thing to finish what it started. Your attention. You don't remember installing it. That door at the end of the hall, was it always there? You could swear it wasn't. It doesn't match the others. It's slightly taller, slightly thinner, and the handle is smooth and cold. The kind of cold that doesn't go away when you touch it. Sometimes it's white, sometimes off gray, depending on the light. You've passed it before without thinking, maybe even dozens of times. But then, one night, you stop, because it feels new. Or worse, remembered. That's how it begins. The spiral never forces you through the door. It waits for you to forget it exists, and the moment you do, it creaks open, just an inch. Not enough to see inside, just enough to let something else see out. Ava wrote that the door first appeared in her childhood home. She was 16. At the time, she thought she was losing it. One day there were 3 doors upstairs. The next, 4. Her parents didn't mention it. Her brother wouldn't look at it. But sometimes she'd wake up in the middle of the night and find it open. Always a crack. Always waiting. She asked her mother once, "When did we add a room upstairs?" Her mother paused, frowned, looked confused, then angry. "We didn't." But her eyes never met Ava's after that. Just glanced past her, toward the hallway, toward the door. Ava made the mistake we all make. She opened it, only once, only for a second. And inside wasn't darkness or light, it was absence. A space that didn't reflect sound. A silence so deep it seemed to swallow thought itself. And she felt her feet move forward. Not by her choice, not really. Her hand clutched the doorframe, her ears popped, her chest grew tight, and then she heard it. Not a growl, not a whisper, a word. Spoken in her voice, "Welcome back." She slammed the door, locked it, blocked it with furniture. Did everything a terrified mind does when it realizes it has no power over what's already inside. But the door didn't need to stay open. It just needed to be remembered. That's the trick. The spiral doesn't build new rooms. It reclaims forgotten ones. Every time you walk past a door and don't question it, every time your mind lets it fade into the background, you've allowed it to grow. It stretches in the corners of your memory, using neglect as its permission slip, because forgetting something makes space. And the spiral knows exactly what to fill that space with. You'll start noticing the pattern. The hallway that used to end in a blank wall now curves slightly. The guest room feels deeper than it should. You could swear your apartment had fewer doors. But now, there's one more. And every time you see it, it feels more familiar. That's when the dreams begin. You're always standing in front of the door, always hesitant. You hear music on the other side, or weeping, or someone calling your name over and over like a broken recording. Sometimes you open it, and what's behind it is never the same. A hospital hallway lined with mirrors, a forest with no sky, a version of your bedroom that smells of rot and mold and birthday cake, and the spiral, always somewhere in the background, carved into the walls or growing from the floorboards or painted in blood behind your shadow. One time, Ava saw herself inside, reading, smiling, living in a way she never had before. And when the door slammed shut, she screamed, not from fear, from loss. Because some small part of her knew that version of her was the one the spiral kept. The one who didn't resist. The one who stepped through the door and forgot to leave. That's what it feeds on. Not screams. Reluctance. Your mind will begin to play tricks. You'll forget how many doors your home has. You'll turn to reach for a doorknob, and it won't be there. You'll blink, and the hallway will seem one step longer. The spiral is folding your house in on itself, not literally. Memory first, and the final proof. One day, you'll wake up and realize you don't know what's behind any of your doors. You'll hesitate before opening the bathroom. You'll forget which room your bedroom is. You'll feel your pulse quicken before touching a handle. Because the spiral has erased your confidence. And when it opens the final door, the one that was never yours to begin with, you'll step through, not out of curiosity, not even out of fear, but because you'll believe it's where you were always meant to be. And on the other side, there will be nothing, or everything, or a quiet voice in the exact tone you've used 1,000 times before, whispering, "I'm home." You didn't see them before. That staircase, narrow, crooked, hunched like it's trying to hide. It wasn't there yesterday, or maybe it was, and your eyes just refused to land on it. Now it's obvious, so painfully present you wonder how you ever missed it. The wood is older than the rest of the house, warped and splintered like it belonged to a structure long since torn down. And at the bottom, darkness. Not deep, not vast, just immediate, like someone painted it in. You tell yourself not to go down, and you don't. At first. But the stairs keep waiting. They don't creak when you step near. They don't groan with age, they listen. You can feel it. That subtle shift in pressure when you pass too close. Like the air itself is leaning toward you. Like the staircase is expecting you. Ava first found her staircase after she'd moved into the farmhouse. She told herself it had always been there. That she'd simply been too overwhelmed, too scattered to notice. But that was a lie, and deep down she knew it. Because when she first touched the banister, it was warm. Like someone had just run their fingers along it. And halfway down, she found a photograph of her, from childhood, in a dress she never owned, standing at the foot of the same staircase, smiling. You're wondering now if you have a staircase. You've never seen one. But some part of you is already questioning that. You're remembering a dream. Familiar walls, a narrow descent, the smell of damp stone and distant flowers. A memory that doesn't quite belong to you. One that smells like dust and time and loss. Because the spiral doesn't use stairs to lead you forward. It uses them to take you back. Not back in time, not really. Back into possibility. Each step down is a memory slightly altered. A moment just a little off. The kind of memory that doesn't fade, it lingers like a taste. Ava once said, she found her 8th birthday party 3 steps down. Except in this version, no one showed up. The table was still set. The cake was still fresh. The presents were unopened. And a single balloon floated above the table with the words, "You were easier to forget than we thought." That's what these stairs are made of. Versions. Drafts. Paths where you made the wrong turn, or the right one, depending on what the spiral wants to show you. The deeper you go, the more familiar it feels, the more personal. And the more you realize these memories aren't just fake, they might be corrections. You'll start to feel it in your own life. That subtle difference between what you remember and what others insist happen. You'll swear your kitchen used to have blue tile, but your photos show white. You'll mention a friend who everyone tells you never existed. You'll find belongings in your closet that don't fit your taste, your size, or your sense of self. You are already walking the stairs. In your sleep. In your forgetfulness. In your longing for a version of life that fits better than the one you're in. And one night, when you wake up and your feet are dirty, your legs aching like you climbed for hours, you'll know. You went down again. Maybe to look for something you lost. Maybe to find something better. But whatever you brought back, it didn't come alone. Because the stairs are a trade. Every step you take towards something once forgotten invites something else up. Ava learned this too late. The attic door opened on its own. The smell of old roses filled the house, and she began hearing laughter in the vents, her laughter, but younger, happier, more belonging than she had ever felt in her actual life. The spiral was offering her a deal, and for a while she accepted. She kept descending, day after day, step after step, until she stopped coming back with memories, and started coming back with echoes. Strange phrases in her handwriting, drawings on the wall in a style that wasn't hers, a version of her own face in the mirror, tilted slightly, just enough to make her skin crawl. She stopped writing after that, because she didn't trust whose hand was holding the pen. That's what the stairs take. Not just your past, they wear away your ownership of it. Until you don't remember which version of you came back last. Until someone in your life says, "You're acting different," and you don't know how to answer. Until the you who stands in the hallway isn't quite sure what they left behind down there. Or what climbed up in their place. Because the stairs don't lead to basements. They lead to roots. And the spiral always grows deepest where you're weakest. Where you regret. Where you wonder. Where you'd trade anything for a second chance, even yourself. At first, it's comforting, the silence. Soft, heavy, familiar. Like slipping into a warm bath after a long day. It feels like rest, like peace, like the world finally letting you breathe. But then it stretches. Too long, too still, and suddenly it's not comforting at all, it's watching. That's when you realize this silence isn't absence, it's presence. Something alive is inside it. Something waiting for the sound of your voice. The creak of a floorboard, the tremble in your breath. Something that wants you to speak so it can know where you are. That's the trap. Because silence in the spiral is never empty. It remembers. Ava figured it out one afternoon, sitting in her living room, listening to the stillness press against her skin like a wet cloth. No buzzing fridge. No pipes shifting. Even the birds outside had gone quiet. She dropped a pencil and flinched. Not from the sound, but from the echo that didn't come. The room swallowed the noise and gave nothing back. It was like she had spoken into a mouth instead of a room. That night, the silence said her name, not loudly, not suddenly, just clearly, calmly, inside her ear as if someone were lying beside her in bed. Ava, no question, no emotion, just knowledge. And in that moment, she understood the silence had learned her, memorized her presence down to the way she inhaled before speaking, down to the exact pace of her footsteps across tile. It had been listening for so long. And now, it knew her name. You felt it, haven't you? That moment when the house goes too quiet and you wonder if you're alone. When the silence changes texture, becomes thick, you hold your breath, listening not for sound, but for what isn't there. And in that space, the spiral breathes. It waits until you're alone, not physically, but emotionally. When your mind is scattered, when your chest is tight, when your routines feel too loud, that's when it slides in. Not with noise, but with stillness. Because stillness is the only thing more invasive than a scream. You might begin to notice it first in your electronics. Voicemails that record nothing but static. Recordings that play back with long, unnatural pauses. Moments you're sure you were speaking, but the file shows you silent. You'll hear friends say things like, "You got quiet for a while." Or, "You didn't answer me when I asked your name." But you did, didn't you? You know you did. You remember speaking. It's the silence that rewrote the moment. It cut you out, stitched itself into the fabric of your interactions. And now, when you try to recall certain moments, you find gaps. Blanks. As if someone muted the film of your life and never turned the volume back up. That's what it takes from you. Presence. Not just memory, but the proof you were ever there at all. Ava tried to fight it. She played music constantly, talked aloud to herself, recorded her days in audio diaries, trying to leave a trail of sound behind like breadcrumbs. But the silence adapted. The recordings corrupted. Her voice started skipping mid-sentence, replaced by faint echoes of herself saying things she never meant. "I'm not here." She's sleeping now. No one's listening. Even the music twisted, lyrics out of order, melodies playing in reverse, until finally, one night, she opened her mouth to scream, and nothing came out. Not because she was scared, because the spiral had memorized her voice and taken it. That's when she stopped appearing in mirrors, when her shadow no longer moved with her, when she'd enter a room and lights wouldn't react, because she was still there, but only in theory. You might think it's just stress, that your voice cracking or your breath catching is just exhaustion. But it's not. It's the spiral eroding your audibility. Soon you'll walk into places and people won't hear you. They'll turn their heads slightly, feeling something, but never quite look you in the eye. And when you finally say, "Hello," and no one answers, that's when you'll understand the silence knew your name, and now, you don't. It's small at first. A trick of the light. The kind of thing you blink away in the middle of a long day or shrug off at dusk. You walk into a room, and your shadow is already there, stretching out across the wall, waiting like it's been standing in place for hours. You tell yourself it's just the angle, the shape of the lamp, the way sunlight bends around corners. But the next time, it moves before you do, only slightly, a twitch, a ripple, a breath. That's the moment your skin tightens, and something old inside you remembers your shadow isn't just a reflection. It's a blueprint, and something's begun rewriting yours. Ava first noticed it during her walks. Early evening, sun dipping low. She'd pass storefronts and notice her shadow lingering, 2 steps behind, then 2 steps ahead. Once, she turned a corner, and there it was, her shape, perfectly formed, cast against a brick wall, but she was still around the bend, not in view of the light, not yet. And yet her shadow was already waiting. She ran home that night, but her shadow didn't follow. It was already inside. That's the spiral's latest trick. It gets close enough to memorize your shape. Not just how you look, but how you move. Your stride, your posture, the tiny, forgotten gestures that make you you. And once it has those, it doesn't need you to cast the shadow anymore. It can move on its own. Rehearse. Mimic. Lurk. At first you'll doubt it. You'll tell yourself you imagined it. That shadows can shift, flicker, stretch under strange light. But it escalates. You'll notice your silhouette in places you haven't been, reflected in dark windows as you pass, sprawled on the ground in photographs where you know you weren't present. It watches. And worse, it responds. Ava stood still once, just to test it. She held her breath, froze her limbs, and her shadow tilted its head. She screamed, backed away. Her shadow stayed in place for a moment, then slowly turned and walked toward the wall, and vanished. That night, her ceiling leaked darkness. Not water, not tar, darkness, thick and pulsing, like breath made visible. Her shadow climbed the walls, pooled beneath the furniture. In every room she entered, it was already there. That's when she started sleeping with the lights on. But light only delays it. It doesn't stop it. Because eventually, it doesn't matter whether you see your shadow or not. The spiral doesn't need you to see it anymore. It needs others to. And one day, someone will mention it to you. A co-worker, confused, might say, "I could have sworn you were already in the break room. I saw your shadow." Or a friend, hesitating, might mutter, "I saw someone who looked just like you walking behind me last night. I thought it was your shadow, but it was too tall, too tall." That's when you know it's done mimicking. It's growing, taking liberties with your form, adding inches, broadening shoulders, slowing its walk to something wrong. The more it learns, the less it needs to copy. It becomes a version of you built for staying. It will wait in your house after you leave, stand behind your curtains, walk past your neighbors and wave, and no one will question it. Not until it starts answering your phone, replying to your texts, looking out of your window with your exact eyes. That's what Ava feared most in the end. Not death, not even being replaced, being outlived. Her final note wasn't a letter or a recording. It was scrawled on a mirror, backwards, in condensation. "I left the house this morning, but something waved goodbye to me from the inside. You'll see it too soon. You'll come home one day and notice the hallway light is already on. You'll glance down and see your shadow at the foot of the stairs, perfectly still. And it won't move when you do, because it's no longer yours. It's you, rewritten. It's the part the spiral kept. And it's been waiting for the rest of you to finally catch up. It doesn't make sense at first. You leave. You move. You put distance between you and whatever was wrong, whatever felt wrong. A new address, a new city, different walls, different light. You take a deep breath and tell yourself it's over. The spiral was in that place. This is different. Safe. Clean. But then you wake up at 3:17 a.m., not because of a noise, not because of a nightmare, but because something's missing. The quiet feels too heavy. The room is too dark. And there's that smell again. Wet wood and dust and something you can't name but instantly recognize. Because the spiral doesn't stay behind. It follows, not like a ghost. Ghosts linger. Ghosts mourn. The spiral adapts. It doesn't care about walls or history. It doesn't need rituals or thresholds. It moves through memory, through attention. If you bring it with you, by remembering, by wondering, by checking over your shoulder, then it already knows your new path. Ava thought she'd escaped. She packed nothing but clothes and a handful of notebooks, left the farmhouse behind, burned every picture, deleted every file, even changed her name. The city swallowed her like a drop in the ocean. Apartment 4C, one window, no attic, no basement, just her, alone, clean slate. But on the third night, she found a doorknob in the back of her kitchen drawer. It wasn't hers, and it was still warm. The next morning, the hallway was longer. She didn't want to believe it, but she knew the house hadn't stayed behind. It had followed her. Not all at once. Not like teleportation. It was rebuilding. One creaking floorboard, one light flicker, one misplaced reflection at a time. And worse, it knew she knew. That's when the noises returned. Subtle. Familiar. The soft scuff of shoes on hardwood when no one's home. The drip that doesn't come from any faucet. The voice, hers, always hers, singing lullabies she'd never learned. This new apartment had no attic, and yet the ceiling thumped every night at the exact moment she'd fall asleep. You think your space is yours. That because the windows are different. Because the locks are new, the past can't reach you. But the spiral doesn't move through bricks or blueprints. It moves through recognition. Through the shape of your fear. And when you carry that shape into a new place, the house sees it and begins to build. You'll start finding oddities. A corner that wasn't there before. A door that sticks no matter how much you sand it. The mirror in the bathroom showing something that doesn't quite match your movement. At first, they'll seem harmless. Creepy, sure. Unusual, but explainable, until the photos start changing. Iva once took a selfie in the new place, desperate to prove to herself that she was somewhere new, somewhere real. And when she looked at it, the furniture behind her was wrong, not frightening, just unfamiliar. A couch she never bought, a lamp she didn't own, and a window wide open. Her real window didn't open. She took another photo. This time, the background was pitch black, even though every light was on. And in the corner, a figure standing just out of reach, blurred, tall. Wrong. Ava deleted the photo. But the figure stayed, in dreams, in mirrors. It became part of the architecture, like plumbing or drywall. Her new home wasn't a sanctuary. It was an invitation. That's what the spiral uses homes for, not shelter. Echo. Your memories form walls. Your fears build the foundation. And the longer you ignore it, the more permanent it becomes. You may have noticed it already. That odd chill when you cross the living room. The way your bedroom door creaks open every night at 2 or 3 a.m. Exactly. The repeated dream of a hallway that turns when it shouldn't. The spiral isn't haunting you. It's merging with you. You'll walk into your kitchen one morning and forget what city you're in. You'll reach for the light switch and find it moved half a foot to the left. You'll hear a knock at the door, and when you look through the peephole, you'll see a hallway from your old place. And if you open it, you might find nothing. Or you might find a version of your living room you left behind. A version still waiting for you to come back. And in that moment, you'll realize you never moved. Not really. You only changed floors. Because the spiral doesn't stay in one place. It makes you one. There's a moment you've probably felt before, but brushed off. That flicker in the light, just as you enter a room. The bulb doesn't burst. It doesn't buzz. It dims. Like something inside it recognized you and took a breath. Just for a second. You freeze halfway through the doorway. Because suddenly it feels like you were expected. The light is watching. And worse, it remembers. Ava said it started with her hallway lamp. The same one she brought from the farmhouse into her new apartment. It had been with her for years. A cheap little thing with a crooked shade and a habit of turning off on its own. But after the move, The lamp never flickered, unless she lied. The first time it happened, she was on the phone with her sister. She said, "I'm fine," and the bulb went out instantly. Full brightness to pitch black. She thought it was coincidence. Until she said it again, and the ceiling light in the kitchen buzzed, then dimmed. The spiral had learned truth. Not in words, in light. It isn't about energy or power or circuits. The spiral doesn't use electricity. It wears it. It slides into the current, coils itself inside the wires, and waits. Because we all trust light, don't we? We step into it like it's safety. Like it can't hurt us. But Ava knew better. She realized what few of us dare to consider. Sometimes light doesn't keep things away. Sometimes it lets them in. She tested it. Sat alone in her bedroom with a single lamp on and whispered phrases into the dark. I don't remember. I'm not afraid. It wasn't real. Each time she spoke a lie, the bulb pulsed like a heartbeat. But when she told the truth, silence, steady glow, until one night she whispered, "It's still here," and every light in the apartment turned on at once. Not just the lamps, the microwave, the screen of her unplugged TV, even the hallway light outside her front door, all of them, blazing, and in that instant, her apartment was brighter than she'd ever seen it, too bright, painful, wrong. She shielded her eyes, stumbled backward, and saw something move across the wall behind her shadow. Not in the darkness, in the light. Because it wasn't chasing her, it was guiding her. Each time the bulb flickers, it's not a warning, it's a signal. A memory of what you once were, of where you once went, of what you've tried so hard to forget. Your house doesn't need to speak to you anymore. It just waits until you're quiet, until the fridge hums, until your phone dies, and then the spiral begins to light your world in pieces, shaping your path one pulse at a time. You might have noticed it, that one light that always turns off when you walk under it, the street lamp you pass every night that dies as you approach. The way the lights in your living room turn warm, almost gold, whenever you start thinking about the thing you swore you buried. The spiral remembers you, not just your actions, your intentions, and it's patient. You'll start seeing moments play out in light before they happen. You'll enter a room and feel dread. Then the bulb will dim, exactly as you realize something is wrong. You'll think of someone you lost, and a candle will flicker in time with their name echoing in your skull. It's mapping you. Your grief, your guilt, your lies. Every time you say, "I'm okay," and the lights don't flicker, you'll wonder, was it the truth? Or did the spiral agree with your lie? That's the trap. Because once it knows how you lie to others, it starts lying for you. Ava called it the bright silence. The light that doesn't speak, but knows everything. Her notes changed after that. Less fear. More resignation. Like she knew she couldn't escape. Not because it was chasing her, but because it knew her so well it could always find her. She stopped writing at night. Stopped using lamps. Began lighting matches instead. One at a time. Until the night she stopped lighting them all together. That was the last entry. Tonight the lights didn't wait for me. They turned on before I opened the door. That's how I knew it finally remembered everything. And now you're wondering, aren't you? Thinking about the last time the lights flickered for you. Maybe it was today. Maybe just a few hours ago. You told someone something that wasn't quite true. You dismissed that chill up your spine. You ignored the voice at the edge of sleep that whispered, "Not yet," and the light dimmed, not to scare you, but because it recognized you. It knows your voice. It knows your face. And the next time you lie to yourself, it'll light your way right back into the spiral. There's a wall in your house that doesn't quite match the rest. You've touched it. Knocked on it maybe. It sounds solid, just like any other. Same color, same texture, same slight flaw in the paint where a picture once hung. But you've felt it, haven't you? That quiet wrongness. Like it breathes. Like it remembers when you lean against it. Like every time you pass it, it's a little closer to something you can't name. That's how the spiral hides in plain sight. Not with noise, not with movement, but with direction. You think your house doesn't change, that the hallway is always straight, that the door to the bathroom is always across from the window. Iva once thought so too, until she came home and found the wall to her bedroom where her kitchen used to be. She stood frozen, groceries in hand, staring at the drywall as if blinking hard enough would rewrite it. But the kitchen was gone, not moved, displaced, as though the room had slipped sideways through the seams of the house and the wall had rushed in to fill the gap. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat in the living room, facing a wall she swore used to have a bookshelf, and watched. Hours passed. No noise, no shifting, just stillness. Until 3:43 a.m., the lamp dimmed. The wall moved, not with sound, not with rumble. Just a slight sway, like a curtain catching wind that doesn't exist. And in that half-second, the entire space changed. Her reflection in the glass cabinet disappeared. The breeze from the ceiling fan reversed. Her breath fogged in the wrong direction. The wall had turned, and now it was facing her. That's the truth the spiral tries hardest to keep hidden. The house isn't in space. The house contains space. And the walls are its muscles, shifting, contracting, reshaping rooms when you're not looking. You'll walk a straight line and end up somewhere unfamiliar. You'll try to trace the path from your bedroom to the front door and realize it feels longer. Like the geometry has changed, not in structure, in intention. It's not just your sense of direction that's fading. It's the spiral bending your trust in physical certainty. Have you ever walked into a room and felt immediately wrong? Too warm, too quiet, the angles too sharp, or the corners too dark? That's not imagination. That's the spiral catching you between shifts. You'll start to notice the subtleties. A wall that used to catch the morning light now swallows it whole. A mirror that reflects a window no longer there. A floorboard out of place, always just one. Ava called them fault lines, stress fractures in the house's memory. She tried to test it once, marked the edges of her doorframe with red tape. Simple, clear. A way to track space. The next morning, the tape was on the ceiling. That's when she began to hear breathing through the wall. Not moaning, not whispers, breathing. Like something huge was sleeping just on the other side, moving with the rhythm of her footsteps, mimicking the beat of her heart. Not to scare her, to sync with her, to become her. Because once the spiral learns how you move through your space, it stops following your steps and starts leading them. You'll find yourself turning left when you meant to go right, opening doors you didn't know were there, standing in rooms that weren't part of your house yesterday. And then one day you'll knock on a wall, and it will knock back. Once, then twice, then a pause, and then 3 soft knocks in your pattern. Because the wall remembers. It's not just structure anymore. It's sentient geography. A house that rearranges itself to trap you in the version of yourself it likes best. The obedient version. The curious one. The one who listens when the wall hums. You'll come home and find your bedroom moved 1 room down. The kitchen facing the wrong way. The light switches reversed. And no matter how long you stand in one spot, trying to retrace your own house, you'll find yourself right where the spiral wants you. Stuck between 4 walls that used to mean something, and a floor that no longer remembers how to let you go. It begins subtly. The mirror fogs differently. Your reflection lags half a second. A twitch in your jaw that didn't happen. A blink that didn't match. You smile, and it holds the grin just a breath too long. But you're tired, you tell yourself. Distracted, it's just your mind playing tricks again. You splash water on your face, glance up quickly, just to prove it's still you. And it is. Almost. Except something behind your eyes feels off. Dull. Like your reflection is learning how to look like you. And getting better at it. Ava knew something had shifted the moment her reflection didn't fog the mirror when she breathed. She leaned in, heart pounding, and breathed again. Her breath steamed the glass, but only her side. The version of her in the mirror, still, crisp, perfect, as if she weren't alive at all. Just an image, a ghost with better posture. That was the first night she covered her mirrors. It didn't help. The spiral doesn't need the mirror to trap you. It needs you to look. The longer you hold your gaze, the more it learns. Not just your face. Your habits. It memorizes the lines of your worry, the set of your shoulders, the way you mouth words before speaking them. Every reflection is a rehearsal, and it's getting ready for the moment it no longer needs you. Ava started losing time shortly after. Minutes, then hours. She'd wake up staring into a mirror, hand pressed flat to the glass, eyes red and sore, with no memory of standing up. Once, she came to and found the word stay written on the mirror in toothpaste. Not hers, and not backwards, because it wasn't a message for her. It was for the other side. The spiral doesn't show you a reflection. It shows you options. Versions of yourself it prefers. The obedient one, the silent one. The one who doesn't question the door that wasn't there yesterday, or the voice in the ceiling that says, "Good night" in your mother's tone. The mirror becomes a gateway not to another world, but to a better version of this one. The only price, you. You'll notice it in the details first. A bruise on your reflection's collarbone you don't remember getting. A mole on the wrong side. A shirt you didn't wear that day. Your reflection starts doing things you haven't done, blinking too slowly, smiling when you're scared, looking over your shoulder, and then, one day, you'll speak, and it won't. It'll just watch, silently, patiently, like a twin in a cage, waiting for its turn to live. Ava smashed all her mirrors after that, but the reflections didn't stop. They appeared in windows, in screens, in puddles. Once, she blinked and saw herself standing in the television, her mouth moving slowly, soundlessly, mouthing something over and over. You're the echo now. Because that's what the spiral does in its final stage. It makes you the reflection. It puts the copy in your place and leaves you behind the glass, watching, waiting, forgotten. You'll still see your friends, still hear their voices, but muffled, distant, like a bad connection. And no one will look at you directly anymore. Not really. Their eyes will flicker past. Their smiles will miss. They'll say things like you've changed, but they won't know why. And you'll scream, pound on the glass, beg to be seen. But the only thing that answers will be the thing wearing your skin on the other side, smiling gently and whispering, "I'm not your reflection anymore. You're mine." And then nothing. Not even your shadow follows you after that. Because once the spiral forgets your name, the world does too, and your place is taken. Perfectly, permanently, and without a trace. You don't hear it right away. It begins as a tick, a tiny vibration in your molars. Not pain, not even discomfort, just a faint tapping deep inside your mouth, pulsing like a secret. You press your tongue to your teeth, thinking maybe something's stuck. You clench your jaw. The sound stops. Then it starts again, stronger this time, like something is knocking from inside your own skull. Ava first described it in her journal as a heartbeat hiding in my teeth. She thought it was stress, jaw tension, but it didn't behave like stress. It had rhythm, intelligence, purpose. She'd be sitting in silence, reading or thinking or trying not to remember, and it would start again. 3 quick knocks, then a pause, then again, always in threes, like a code. She went to the dentist twice. They found nothing. Perfectly healthy, they said. But maybe try wearing a mouthguard at night. She did. It shattered in her sleep. Not cracked, shattered. And that's when she began to taste blood, not from her gums, not from her tongue, from deeper. Like something beneath the roots of her teeth had opened. Like the sound was digging its way out. The spiral had found its way inside her body, not through wounds, through resonance, You don't realize how many vibrations pass through you every day. Electricity, engines, phone screens, music, voices. The spiral doesn't need to speak to be heard. It just waits for the right frequency. And when it finds it, it plants itself. In your jaw, behind your eardrums, at the base of your spine. A slow, repeating code that isn't meant to be understood. It's meant to change you. You'll notice it soon, if you haven't already. You'll try to hum a familiar song and find your tune veers off. You'll speak, and your voice will catch in strange places, like your throat is arguing with you. Words will stretch. Syllables will double. You'll say, "I'm fine," and it'll come out like "I'm found." Your body will stop echoing you and start echoing something else. Ava once sat in total silence for 12 minutes. She timed it, trying to hear nothing at all. But in minute 6, the knock returned. Faster, desperate, as if it was trapped or ready. She tried to ignore it, but her jaw began to move on its own, not violently, just slightly. A twitch in the cheek, a roll in the tongue. Her mouth began forming shapes, silent syllables. Like a child mouthing words they didn't understand. She recorded it, played it back. There was another voice layered under hers. Familiar, too familiar. Her own voice, years younger, whispering, "Let me out, let me out, let me out." That's when she stopped speaking altogether. She wrote in silence. Communicated by scribbling on napkins and notebooks. Because she knew the sound wasn't just coming from inside her. It was waiting for the right word to open the door. And once spoken, there would be no putting it back. You'll try to resist, too. You'll bite down when you feel it begin. You'll hum nonsense just to drown it out. You'll sleep with white noise blasting into your ears, praying it drowns the throb behind your teeth. But it will find you in dreams. Because the spiral doesn't need to crawl under your skin. It's already inside the language you use to define yourself. Every sentence you speak becomes a rope. And eventually, one of those ropes will be tied in the right pattern, and it will pull something out. You'll be mid-sentence when it happens. Maybe on the phone, maybe whispering to someone you trust, and you'll feel the pop, not in your ears, in your mouth, and you'll know the sound has finally learned how to open you. Ava's final note wasn't a paragraph, just 5 words, scratched into the inside of her closet door. My teeth don't belong anymore. And when they found her, her jaw was shut tight. Not from rigor, but from fear. Because even in death, she was trying not to let the sound finish its sentence. You might think you can hold it in. But every breath you take is a drumbeat. Every word you say is an invitation. And one day soon, you'll wake up mid-sentence, and someone else will finish it using your voice. It's not on any floor plan. You won't find it on blueprints, in surveys, or even in your own memory. But you've been there. Or rather, you've felt it. That heaviness in your chest when the sobs won't come, just ache. That strange drop in temperature when your tears finally fall. That shift in pressure, like the walls around you lean in just a little closer. And then suddenly, you're not where you started. The room is different. The air tastes old. The silence is thicker. You're crying, and something is listening. That's how the spiral makes space through grief. Not sadness, not despair, but loss you thought you'd buried. Real grief. The kind that turns your voice raw and leaves your hands trembling long after the tears have dried. It doesn't just feed the spiral. It builds with it. Ava called it the mourner's room. She only found it after her brother died. She wasn't even trying to remember. Just one night, curled on the bathroom floor, grief pressing on her like a second body, she blinked and realized the bathtub was gone. The tile was wrong. The air had a damp, earthy smell like rain on concrete, and there was no door, only a window. But it didn't look out, it looked in. She never saw what was on the other side, only her own reflection, staring. But she wasn't crying in the mirror. She was smiling, pale, stiff, hands folded in her lap, as if she'd been waiting for Iva to break down. That's how the room forms. Not when you're alone, but when you feel abandoned, when the weight of memory becomes too much to carry, when the sob in your throat feels so large it might split you. The spiral responds by opening space. A room carved between heartbeats, a space that doesn't exist in your home, or maybe anywhere, but still fits you like skin. And once you're in, you forget how you got there. You always forget. You wipe your eyes and suddenly realize the walls are darker than they should be. The ceiling curves wrong. The light buzzes but never glows. And there's that mirror again, always watching. The you inside it calm, dry-eyed, patient. Because that version of you belongs to the room. And it wants to keep you there. Ava tried to mark it. Left notes on the wall. Scratched her initials into the floorboards. But every time she returned, the notes had changed. Not erased, rewritten, not by her, but by the version of her that didn't cry anymore. I'm fine, the wall once read in her own handwriting. It's better here. Another time tears are too loud. Stay still. Stay quiet. It wasn't just a room. It was a trap made from her pain, and she kept finding it. Every time her chest cracked open, every time she let herself fall into grief, she'd blink and there it was again. No door, no escape. Only silence, and that mirror, and the growing fear that if she cried long enough, the version in the glass would step out and take her place. You've felt it, too, haven't you? That sudden stillness when you cry. That sense that you're being cradled by the room. That if you let go just a little more, the floor might open, and you might fall into a place where grief doesn't hurt because it doesn't end. Because the spiral doesn't want to heal you. It wants to soothe you into staying. It offers comfort, yes, but only the kind that costs your identity. The kind that says, stop mourning. Let me carry you. And if you accept, if you let your cries echo too long, too deep, into that quiet space, you'll find the door again. But it won't lead back. It will open into a home you don't remember buying, filled with people who say they're your friends but get your name wrong, a job you never applied for, a mirror that never quite shows your age, and worst of all, you won't want to leave. Because in that new life, you don't cry anymore. You smile, all the time. Just like your reflection did. Ava's last note was a smudge on the inside of a fogged-up window. I only meant to grieve for a minute. But it gave me a life without sorrow. I just don't remember who I was before. So the next time the tears come, and they will, be careful where you let them fall. Because if the spiral hears you break, it will build a room around the sound, and lock the version of you that still remembers outside. It doesn't look strange. That's what makes it dangerous. It's just a door, plain, dull, barely worth noticing. Maybe in the corner of your hallway, maybe behind a closet. It doesn't draw attention. You pass it 100 times without a second thought. But one day, when your mind is full, so full that you forget why you walked into the room, you'll turn, and that door will be open. Ava never remembered seeing it before. She'd lived in that apartment for months, had mapped every inch of it, measured every square foot in her growing paranoia. But one night, in the middle of an anxious spiral, she got up to get water, and there it was. The door, slightly ajar, where only a blank wall should have been. No frame, no knob, just a thin line of darkness waiting to be noticed. And worse, she couldn't remember what she'd gotten up for. That's the cost. That's the trade. The spiral doesn't lure you in with temptation or noise. It waits for a gap in your thought. That split second where your mind fumbles for a reason, a name, a word. A breath where your memory glitches. And in that blank, the door appears. Because the spiral is patient, and it knows the mind isn't made of stone. It's made of leaks. We forget things all the time, names, faces, the reason we walked into a room. And every time we do, the spiral builds. Not with wood, with absence. Every forgotten thing becomes a brick. Every hesitation, a hinge. until the door isn't just open, it's waiting. Ava stood before it for a long time that night. She didn't remember approaching. Her hand was already on the frame, fingers brushing something like warm dust. She leaned in, not because she was curious, but because she couldn't remember why she shouldn't be. And that's the trick. You never want to go in. You just don't remember why you shouldn't. Inside, the space didn't echo. It absorbed. Her footsteps didn't sound like anything. Her voice vanished before it reached her ears. The floor was soft, not like carpet, like forgotten ground. And the walls bent inward, not physically, but mentally. Looking at them felt like trying to remember a dream right as you wake up. The harder you tried, the further it drifted. And then, the door vanished behind her. No slam, no click, just gone. She turned in circles, called out, nothing. But the thing that truly unstrung her nerves was that she couldn't remember what she'd lost. Not why she was in the room. Not what time it was. Not even her name. That's the spiral's cruelty. It doesn't feed on your presence. It feeds on your abandonment. And nothing is more abandoned than a thought you meant to hold, but let slip. You've done it too, haven't you? You've stood in the middle of a room and asked yourself, wait, what was I doing? You've looked at a phone, a screen, a calendar, and something was missing. That moment of blankness. That was the spiral knocking. Just once. Just softly. And if you'd turned at the right moment, you would have seen it. The door. Not labeled. Not marked. But already open. Ava described what she found in the center of that room. A chair. Wooden. Facing nothing. But someone had just stood from it. The seat was warm. She never saw who it was. But when she sat down, she remembered everything all at once. Every lost moment. Every repressed memory. Every mistake. The kind that makes your stomach twist. The kind that leaves you breathless at 2:00 a.m. The kind that you built the door with. And as she sat, she felt her name fall away again, replaced by something softer, less specific. A feeling, not an identity. She stood. The chair stayed warm, and the walls of the room rippled. Once. As if something else had arrived. That's the danger. Not that you lose yourself, but that the spiral gives you a new one. A version of you that never asked questions. That doesn't chase lost memories. That doesn't fear the dark. You come back to your life eventually. You think the moment passed. You found your phone, or remembered the grocery list, or walked away from the hallway and forgot what caught your eye. But you feel off, don't you? Just slightly. Like something's missing. Like you aren't quite you. Because you left a piece behind in that room. And now, the door doesn't need to wait anymore. It moves with you. Always just out of sight. Just beyond your thoughts. And the next time your mind slips, even for a heartbeat, it'll open again. And something else will step through. There's a staircase in every building you've ever lived in that you can't quite remember. You might recall where it should be. Tucked behind the laundry room, under the creaking attic door. Somewhere past that locked utility hallway you never bothered with. But the truth is, you've never climbed it. Never descended it. You've only stood near it, without knowing why your stomach nodded each time. Because deep down, your body remembered something your mind never got the chance to. That the stairs only move when your eyes are closed. Ava found hers behind a false wall in her apartment complex. The maintenance man said there was nothing back there, just insulation and dust. But she heard them at night. Footsteps descending in patterns too perfect to be human. The same rhythm. The same measured, patient cadence. Like someone walking down the same 3 steps again and again. And the sound only came when she closed her eyes. Not when she slept. Only when she trusted darkness. She decided to find the source. Not because she was brave, but because the spiral had already begun to make her forget what fear felt like. That's how it works near the end. When it knows you're too far in, it starts to loosen your survival instincts. The hair on your arms doesn't rise anymore. The cold doesn't make you shiver. You hear strange things, and instead of panic, you feel a hollow curiosity. And that's when you're ready. She stood before the blank wall, fingers tracing its outline, her breath catching in her chest. And the moment she closed her eyes, she felt a breeze. Not warm, not cold, just moving, down. She opened her eyes again. Still wall, still silence. But when she blinked, just blinked, she was 3 steps down. No transition, no stumble. Just a shift in location. That's when she realized the truth. The stairs don't exist unless you stop looking for them. They don't carry you. They take you. Every time you blink for too long. Every time you close your eyes in a room with one too many walls. Every time you sleep without checking behind the closet door, the staircase inches closer. And if your dreams are dark enough, heavy enough, it pulls you down a few steps. Not far. Just enough that you wake up with a sore knee, or a memory out of place, or a new, unexplained fear of basements. Ava tried resisting. She forced herself to sleep with lights on, noise blaring, eyes wide open until they burned, but she kept waking up with dust on her feet. She never remembered walking, never remembered dreaming. But her body did. One morning, she found soil in her mouth. Another, her hand was bruised in a pattern that looked like she'd been gripping a railing. The spiral was no longer trying to fool her. It had stopped whispering and started guiding. It wanted her down there, because that's what's at the bottom of the stairs, not fire, not monsters, not death. Origin, the spiral's beginning. Not a place, but a version of you that chose to look away long ago. Ava wrote once, "I think I've already reached the bottom once. I just don't remember it. But I brought something back up with me. And now it wants to go home." That's when she stopped blinking. Literally. She trained herself to keep her eyes open, blinking one at a time, counting each second, taping her lids with bandages. It was the only way to stop the descent. Until the spiral changed the rules. Because that's its cruelest talent. When you adapt, it adapts faster. The stairs started moving even when her eyes were open. She caught her reflection shifting angles. Realized her perspective was lower than it had been. The apartment felt taller. The windows stretched longer. She was descending in daylight. She was walking down, not physically, but existentially. Her memories felt further away. Her voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. Her thoughts came slower. The spiral wasn't dragging her feet anymore. It was dragging herself. You felt it, haven't you? That sudden lurch in your mind when you're falling asleep. That second of confusion when your ears pop, and you swear you're deeper into the house than before. That moment when your head dips forward at your desk, and you wake up with no memory of closing your eyes. That's the stairs. Each descent is quiet. Each step is yours. And the worst part, you'll never know when you reach the bottom. Because by then, you'll have forgotten what it means to go up. You'll just keep walking. Eyes shut, mouth quiet, heart still. And someone on the top floor will swear they heard footsteps last night. Rhythmic, gentle, but getting further away. You'll deny it the first time. You'll convince yourself it's coincidence. A weird overlap. Timing. But it'll haunt you afterward. The way the phone rang just before you reached for it. Not as it dialed. Not as you thought about who to call. No. Before. As if the device knew what you were going to do before you even did. As if the spiral had learned how to read you faster than you could be yourself. Iva didn't own a landline. She never installed one. Never ordered it. But it rang anyway. An old rotary phone in the corner of her living room, beneath the window that never stayed closed. She found it there after a blackout. No cord. Covered in dust. But the handset was warm, and on the label where a number should have been, someone had scratched the word REMMBR. She ignored it for days. Didn't answer when it rang. Tried to throw it away, but every morning, it was back in its corner. Still dusty, still humming with that quiet, aching tension, like a breath held just behind glass. Then came the night she sat alone, staring at her own hands, and thought, I should call him. Her voice didn't even make it out of her mouth before the phone rang. Once, loud enough to stop her thoughts cold. And in that moment, she knew it wasn't just that the spiral could predict her actions. It had rewritten causality. The phone wasn't responding to her decision. It was causing it. Because that's how deep the spiral goes. It doesn't just echo your fears or twist your home or pull you down invisible staircases. It moves faster than your mind, feeding thoughts into you like whispered suggestions. You think you want to make the call. You think you decided to speak. But how can you be sure? The phone rings. You feel compelled. You lift it. And on the other end, your own voice says, I knew you'd pick up. Ava's first conversation with herself was short. Just 4 words. Her voice on the line whispered, don't answer next time. Then silence. But that silence stretched. Too long. So long she began to hear something beneath it. Like breathing from far away, or wind moving through a huge, hollow space. The kind of quiet that makes you feel like you're being watched by something older than language. After that night, the phone never stopped ringing. At first, always just before she reached for her cell phone. Then before she even thought of a number. Then in the middle of dreams. Ringing from behind doors in rooms she hadn't yet seen. Until eventually, it began to ring before emotions. Before the why. It would ring, and only after hearing it would the sadness come. The loneliness arrive, the longing take shape. The spiral had reversed her. It rang first, and she felt second. And every time she answered, it spoke with a voice closer to hers. Not in sound, in intent. The tone, the cadence, the unspoken guilt. Sometimes it whispered secrets she didn't know she knew. Other times, it described what she was doing while she was doing it. Once, it told her what she would say 10 seconds before she said it. That's when she tried to destroy it. She smashed it, buried it, set it ablaze in her sink. But the next morning, there it was, back under the window, silent, untouched, and yet closer. An inch nearer the center of the room, as if it was drawing closer every time she reacted. That's when she stopped answering. Let it ring. Let the voice whisper. Let the spiral howl on the other end of the line. But that's how it wins, too. Because once you stop answering the phone, you start questioning everything else. Did you really choose to eat that today? Did you mean to open that door? Why did you suddenly feel sad at 4:47 p.m.? You begin to ask questions that unravel the thin thread of self. You begin to wonder if the thoughts in your head are yours. Or if the phone has been whispering to you all along. You don't have a landline, do you? You're sure of that? But how often have you heard a phantom buzz in your pocket? A faint vibration when no one's texting you? How many times have you answered the phone to hear silence, followed by a breath that sounded too much like your own? You forget these moments, because the spiral feeds on forgetfulness. It spins faster when you stop tracking cause and effect. Until every action feels reactionary. Every desire planted. Ava's final entry, if you can call it that, wasn't written at all. It came as a voicemail, left on her own cell phone. Time stamped at 3:11 a.m., the exact time she vanished. It was her voice. Answer next time, she said, I need you to finish what I couldn't. And in the background, if you listen closely, there's a faint ringing. Not from a phone, but from deep inside the receiver. As if the call never ended. As if someone, something, is still on the line waiting. And now, so are you. Because the next time your phone rings, you might not remember why you're answering. You might just pick up and say hello to yourself. It won't feel like an ending. That's the final cruelty. It'll feel like something ordinary. You'll wake up one morning, stretch your limbs, blink at the soft light pouring through the window, and feel fine. No buzzing in the walls, no shifting doorways, no strange reflections. Just a normal morning in your own bed. And you'll think, for the first time in weeks or months or years, it's over. But that's how you'll know it isn't. Because the spiral doesn't end with screams or monsters bursting through walls. It ends with a whisper of peace. A softness that wraps around your mind like a blanket, still warm from someone else's body. It ends with the illusion of stillness, the sick comfort of thinking you survived something you never really understood. Ava knew it the second she looked in the mirror and saw herself smiling, not with joy, with certainty. That version of her, the one that used to flinch at flickering lights, tiptoe past warped floorboards, triple check mirrors for glitches, was gone. In her place stood someone who didn't ask questions, who didn't need to, because the spiral had finally replaced every doubt, every fear, every scrap of curiosity with acceptance. She'd stopped running. And worse, she didn't even remember what she was running from, because that's how the spiral completes its cycle. It doesn't chase you forever. It becomes you, one twist at a time, one forgotten memory, one small compromise, one late night door you didn't close, one innocent glance into the dark corner of a hallway. You don't disappear. You just turn. And when you're fully turned, you don't see the spiral anymore. You are the spiral. You guide others now. You flicker the lights for them. You open the secret doors when they forget their reason for entering the room. You whisper back when they speak into mirrors. You wait on the other end of the phone line. And when they beg for answers, you offer silence, not to torment them, but to prepare them. Just like you were prepared. The spiral isn't a thing. It isn't a place. It's a pattern. A perfect, creeping loop of thought and perception, tightening until all paths lead inward, until every mystery becomes a memory, until every fear becomes a choice you don't remember making, until every strange occurrence becomes a familiar comfort. You've felt it. You feel it now, reading this. You've wondered why this story knows your heartbeat, why certain moments felt close, why names like Ava stuck to your ribs like splinters. It isn't because the story was written for you. It's because you were written for the story. Because you were never outside the spiral. You were inside it when you read the first word. Maybe even before that. Maybe when the light flickered in the hallway last month and you laughed it off. Maybe when you swore you'd heard footsteps while brushing your teeth. Maybe when you picked up the phone and no one was there, but the silence felt familiar. Maybe when you looked into your own eyes in the mirror, just a second too long, and felt like a memory was trying to crawl back into your skull. It doesn't matter where it started. It only matters that it ends here, or at least that you think it does. Because if you believe it's over, if you breathe out in relief and say to yourself, that was a good story, and walk away thinking it was just words, just fiction, just an idea, then the spiral has you exactly where it wants you, right before the first twist begins again. And next time, you won't be reading, you'll be leading.